This one straight to a soundboy chest. Not even nice water time could have digest. Where I say stone, soul to soul of the best. Check it out.
Black History Month. For some reason, this February doesn't feel like Black History Month. Historically, the long, hard history of resistance has been at the heart of that recognition. But this year seems different. I wonder why. Part of it must be the horrendous suffering that struck Haiti about a month ago. The Haitian Revolution has been an inspiration for blacks the world over for over 2 centuries. But even that doesn't explain it. It may be the fact of a black person at the nation's highest office, something that seemed unthinkable just a few years ago. But that ain't all of it. For though this was unexpected and a source of immense pride, there's also the dawning recognition that for millions of blacks, things aren't just not better, they are immeasurably worse. For the brunt of the foreclosure crisis hit blacks and Latinos, who were most subject to the explosive subprime loans for their homes. As the economy fell, the black community faced disproportionate joblessness and longer job searches. All the indicators of social well-being, health, jobs, education, police violence, judicial treatment, imprisonment, and on are trending negatively. And while polls show blacks are the president's most loyal supporters, some must truly wonder, is the most powerful political figure in the country, if not the world, powerless when it comes to addressing the needs of blacks? Thus, a pall falls over Black History Month. From Death Row, this is Mumia Abu-Jamal. These commentaries are recorded by Noel Hanrahan of Prison Radio.
Egypt, a good beginning. The events in Egypt of the past few weeks have raised more questions than answers. And while things seem in a state of flux, some things are clear among them. 1. Revolutions don't just change rulers, but systems. 2. Revolutions designed to gain democracy cannot lead to military rule, for the two are ever in conflict. And 3. The Egyptian struggle is at its beginning, not its end. The forced resignation of Hosni Mubarak from the reins of power was accomplished by a convergence of forces. The demonstrations in Cairo, Alexandria, and throughout the nation, pressure from business interests who lost billions from empty tourism buses, and from anxious elements in the military who saw the potential of greater and greater chaos and perhaps loss of power. Mubarak didn't go easily or willingly, and his choice of Omar Suleiman as his number 2 would have been, at any other time, considered a masterstroke. For Suleiman's primary distinction was his expertise in torture. This was designed to send a ripple of fear and dread throughout Tahrir Square. Surprisingly, it had the opposite effect. It spurred new resistance and hastened his departure. But power ill rests in the hands of military, as the Tunisian and Egyptian experiences illustrated. Both Ben Ali and Mubarak were military men who depended on force to preserve their power and to control dissidents. In Tunisia, Ben Ali bore both titles, president and general. Mubarak was a fighter pilot. Thus, their instincts were to fight, not reason. The eruption in Egypt had its origin in the desperation of Mohammed Abu-Azizi of Tunisia, who, after repeated tries for justice from an unresponsive and corrupt regime, set himself aflame. Abu-Azizi was a 26-year-old man who earned a PhD, couldn't find a job, worked as a fruit vendor, and had his wares illegally seized by police. The fire he lit took his life, but inspired millions of Tunisians, who in turn sparked millions of Egyptians to rebel. Who knows how far these fires will rage? Egypt may be on a long road to awaken from its slumber, but this is the road's beginning, not its end. From death row, this is me, Abu-Jamal.
These commentaries are recorded by Noel Hanrahan of Prison Radio.
Before BP. BP didn't begin as BP. Indeed, it didn't begin as British Petroleum. In 1908, it was known as the Anglo-Persian Oil Company, and it exploited Iranian natural resources and labor ruthlessly. Majority shares in the company were owned by the British government, and Iran offered a rich yield for the company. In 1947, for example, the company pulled in after-tax profits of £40 million, while Iran received a mere £7 million. The average Iranian worker housed in huts formed by rusted, hammered oil cans lived in desolate oil towns and earned about 50 cents a day. One observer from Iran's Petroleum Institute described one such shantytown, Kagazabad, as a place where, quote, in every crevice hung the foul sulfurous stench of burning oil, unquote. Instead of streets, narrow alleyways existed, which the describer called emporiums for rats. He said the town was so desolate that there was not a single tree. Is there any wonder that the government of Mohammed Mossadegh wanted to nationalize the country's oil wealth, or that the CIA and Britain's MI5 assured his ouster and imposed the Shah? BP plundered the country, making money hand over fist. Now they're plundering American resources, and the chickens have indeed come home to roost. From death row, this is Mumia Abu-Jamal.
These commentaries are recorded by Noel Hanrahan of Prison Radio. This is Fualambe. Thoughts on Africa. It's impossible for us to speak of Africa today without reference to her numerous and serious challenges, economic, political, and social. Here in the West, we're inundated with imagery and punditry that details Africa's problems with little cogent analysis of its causes. When the corporate press details African dictatorships, it conveniently ignores the role of U.S. and European economic and political forces in establishing and supporting such dictators, the better to plunder the continent's riches with. The following is an excerpt from the verbatim record of a National Security Council meeting in Washington, D.C. on how the U.S. regards dictators in Africa. I quote, "We must recognize, although we cannot say it publicly, that we need the strong men of Africa on our side. It is important to understand that most of Africa will soon be independent, and that it would be naive of the U.S. to hope that Africa will be democratic." The president asked Stans, I think he refers here to Maurice Stans, whether he was now an expert on Africa since his trip to that continent. Mr. Stans, while disclaiming any expertness, said he formed the impression that many Africans still belonged in the trees, unquote. That was from an NSC meeting in January 1960, cited in the book Excessive Force, Power, Politics, and Population Control, published by the organization Information Project for Africa in 1995. When millions of South Africans lived under the hellish repression of the white nationalists who imposed apartheid, the U.S. gave the racist government its unqualified support. When people all around the world opposed the apartheid regime, the U.S. called for constructive engagement. If it were not for the solidarity and military toughness of the Cubans, apartheid would still be the law of the land in South Africa. That's because the Cuban army, in support of the Angolan army, faced and fought the South African army at a place called Quito Carnival and whipped them. That whipping forced South African business elites to come to the table to negotiate an end to apartheid rule. For 43 years, the nationalists made life a living hell for millions of Africans, Indians, and others. They erected a white minority militarized paranoid state that was an international pariah. Only the U.S. supported it through thick and thin. It says much about Cuba. It says much about Africa. It also says a great deal about the U.S. From death row, this is Mumia Abu-Jamal.
Why defenders of absolute powers of states, like Hobbes, wanted to deny that this was anything to do with the analysis of freedom. And you can see the profound ideological forces that were in play in England in the 17th century, when this theory of freedom was largely seen off by the Hobbesians and later the utilitarians, is that the question they want you to focus on is, which of us is really living as a slave? I mean, who are really slaves? And there have been attempts to keep alive what is an essentially classical way, classical Roman legal way, or classical Roman moral philosophy way of thinking about freedom. There have been attempts to keep this alive in the modern world. And I think it would be right to say that 4 major elements have been identified as to answering the question, who live as slaves? And let's move on to the whole story. And this is in bold what we haven't yet got. The classical concept, which is no dependence. You will not be a liber homo, but a slave. If there could be interference contrary to your interests due to your dependence upon the arbitrary will and power of others. So, who live as slaves? And here are the four increasingly disquieting answers. The main answer given to Hobbes in the 17th century was given by the great tradition of English classical republicans. John Milton, whose college I'm proud to be a member of, James Harrington in his Oceana, these enemies of the monarchical government of 17th century England, insisting that all monarchs have prerogatives, but prerogatives are discretionary powers. But any power which is discretionary leaves people dependent upon it. But that is unfreedom. And hence the insistence, which is the characteristic of the English Republican tradition, that you can only be free in a republic. Because only in republics where you rule yourselves is there no one with discretionary power over you. So there is A. Subjects of monarchs live as slaves. Secondly, citizens of unchecked executives live as slaves. This extension of the answer becomes of extreme importance with the rise of the Whig oligarchy in the 18th century. This is the view of Bolingbroke and his circle in their attack on Walpole. This is likewise the view of Montesquieu in his attack on the Ancien Régime. Unchecked executives leave you unfree because all control by executives of legislatures is discretionary control. But discretionary control leaves us dependent upon the arbitrary will of those who exercise it. But dependence upon the arbitrary will of anyone who could decide, notwithstanding Magna Carta, that there could be an executive decision that puts you in jail without your having been charged. That might happen, but that is slavery. Answer C became crucial in the same period with the rise of the European empires in the 18th century. This is the argument, namely that the colonized live as slaves, which the American colonists put to the British government in the course of the 18th century. The essence of the colonial argument of the 13 colonies of the now United States was that if you're governed, and especially if you are taxed by a colonial power, but have no representation in the legislative imposing those taxes, then you are dependent upon the goodwill of that executive for the level of taxation imposed. Or, to put it another way, you are completely at their mercy. This is arbitrary power. But that, and this is the force of what happened in 1776, that is slavery. It's a very extraordinary irony that these people who were slave owners constructed themselves as slaves in respect of the British, because they saw themselves, rightly of course, as wholly dependent upon the goodwill of the British Parliament. So what the Declaration in 1776 is a declaration of is, of course, a declaration of independence. Independence from what? Well, dependence, of course. And what's so bad about dependence? Dependence is servitude. And if you live as a slave, the law of nature gives you a right to resist. And that is the ideology of the American Revolution. Finally, women live as slaves. This answer, D, becomes very powerful in the late 19th, all through the 19th century, and especially until the reform legislation that allowed women to make their own wills, which only happened in the 1870s. Notice this extraordinarily deep pun. Women did not have wills. They couldn't make a will because they didn't have a will. Why is that? Because all their property became that of their husband upon marriage. Worse than that, the great text of Mary Wollstonecraft, as early as 1792, The Vindication of the Rights of Women, points out that the economic dependence of women upon men, generally, in her society, constructs women. She even uses that phrase. Women have to construct themselves as people who are appealing to men. But that is their servitude, and she uses that word. That is our servitude. John Stuart Mill, in his fine text of 1869, The Subjection of Women, picks up this thought of Wollstonecraft's and uses it in the whole discussion of the importance of women being able to be independent property holders, which was not in English law possible until that time. Finally, although we only have 4, I have put E on the board, other possibilities of servitude. Can we be so optimistic as to suppose that this form of unfreedom is unknown in the liberal democracies of the present day, when we are living under executives which help themselves to more and more discretionary power in defiance of Magna Carta, by the way, every day? Now here I want to draw to a close, and I shall do so by laying out, if I may, without any special emphasis, the different branches of the genealogy that I have now tried to trace. There's nothing new on this slide. This is just a summary of my answer to the question, what is freedom? There it is. Now, as you can see, and this is what matters to me, the outcome of my genealogy is the conclusion that in English language political debates, political argument, as well as political theory of the present time, there are at least 3 different, completely different ways of understanding the concept of individual liberty. What I have called the classical way, what I've called the liberal way, and what I've called the positive way. Now, I believe that each of these, as I've laid them out before you, I may not have succeeded, but I believe they are all coherent in their own terms. But they are, to some degree, rivals. You cannot accept everything that is on the board. And you can see that that is so if you focus finally on the bracketed propositions that I've put at the bottom of each branching section of my genealogy. If you're a pure Hobbesian, you think that there can be lack of... if you're a pure Hobbesian down here, you think that freedom of action and coercion of the will are compatible. If you're a liberal, you think that is crazy. You think that coercion, of course, limits freedom, and it's the way that freedom is limited. If you are a classical theorist of freedom, you think that there can be lack of freedom in the absence of any kind of interference, whether it's coercive or physical. Yet more radically, if you're a positive libertarian, you think that there can be independent, classically so, and unimpeded liberal actions which are nevertheless unfree. Now, those 4 propositions are all mutually incompatible, so you will need to choose. And in the last moment of my lecture, obviously the question is, what choice should you make? Now, that brings me to much the most important thing I want to say in this lecture, much the most important thing. Lecturing in a great university, I have lectured in this university for 45 years, ought never, in my view, to be concerned with telling people what to think about an issue. That is not what we do. What we try to do is to open up an issue, to let you see how one might think about it. I'm not, with my students, trying to tell them what to think. I'm trying to show them how they might think for themselves. And that's what I've tried to do in this lecture. It's an impertinence to say that, because much of what I've said, well, I suspect have been familiar to a lot of you, and some of it to all of you. But what I've tried to present you with is information relevant to answering the question, what is freedom? But as to what answer should be given, that is for you to say. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you very much.
year was 1969, when a small group of young men formed the Philadelphia branch of the Black Panther Party. I was among them, and being barely 15 was the youngest, but my height and size made me seem older. Being a Panther meant not just long, hard work in the community. It meant spending time studying and reading materials that were not familiar. I remember reading Frantz Fanon's The Wretched of the Earth, or rather, tried to. It was written for adults, scholars, revolutionaries, or psychologists. It wasn't written for kids who hadn't graduated high school. Yet orders were orders. So I slogged through the English translation published by Grove Press. I can't say I understood much of it, but some things stuck with me and caused me to think, not about the conditions of besieged Algeria facing French colonialism and domination, but of the life of black folks here in America. One intriguing segment stuck in my mind. Fanon wrote, while the settler or the policeman has the right the livelong day to strike the native, to insult him, and to make him crawl to them, you'll see the native reaching for his knife at the slightest hostile or aggressive glance cast on him by another native. For the last resort of the native is to defend his personality vis-a-vis his brother. It is as if plunging into a fraternal bloodbath allowed them to ignore the obstacle and to put off till later the choice, nevertheless inevitable, which opens up the question of armed resistance to colonialism. Thus, collective auto-destruction in a very concrete form is one of the ways in which the native's muscular tension is set free. When I looked outside the office on Columbia Avenue or out the window of our apartment on Oxford Street, I saw what he described played out as if he were reading my mind. Every Friday or Saturday night, the neighborhood would be in the throes of self-directed violence for the slightest offense. If a brother stepped on another brother's shoe, he could die this weekend. The hospitals did a brisk business in sewing up black folks on the weekend. This I saw, and it gave me tremendous insight into the psychic wounds of oppression, whether one was in the so-called Arab Quarter in Algiers or on Girard Avenue in North Philadelphia. In essence, it was the same thing. I read him then because it was required of us all, and afterwards, in PE or political education classes, we might be called on to discuss and explain our readings, or worse, teach it to people in the community. But truth be told, much of it was Greek to me. Manichaeistic? Pathological? Huh? But the drive to learn is a remarkable thing. So is duty. So you read and read until some things pierce the fog of understanding. Years later, when I reread Fanon, I became intoxicated with his ideas, his analysis, and indeed his predictions of how Africa would emerge from the colonial era into neo-colonialism. Few have performed such a task with Fanon's brilliance or with his acuity of vision. One need only look at passages from The Wretched of the Earth regarding the African bourgeoisie to see how these words, penned over half a century ago, could have been written the very day these words are written. Fanon wrote the following. The national bourgeoisie, which has totally assimilated colonialist thought in its most corrupt form, takes over from the Europeans and establishes in the continent a racial philosophy which is extremely harmful for the future of Africa. From nationalism, we have passed into ultranationalism, to chauvinism, and finally, to racism. Fanon's insights could be summarized in place names like Rwanda, Sudan, Burundi, Liberia, and Nigeria, just to state a few. Kenyan writer and activist Koigiwa Wamwere likened the vast loss of African life to that of an atom bomb, a weapon of mass destruction, which he called and wrote a book entitled Negative Ethnicity. And the real reason isn't because Hutus hate Tutsis or Luos hate Kikuyu or Zulus hate Swazis. It's because the work of decolonization was never truly completed. According to Wamwere, over 5 million African men, women, and children have died from civil wars and ethnic rivalries since the independence movements of the 60s resulted in so-called independence. Thus, Fanon's warnings, if heeded, could have prevented the deaths of some 5 million people in the last half of the 20th century. But it would be misleading to paint Fanon as some kind of prophet. He was a man active in the freedom movements of millions. He knew, met with, and worked with Congo's Patrice Lumumba, its rightful representative, until the UN CIA plot to unseat and assassinate him. Lumumba was slain less than a year after the August 1960 meeting of the Pan-African Conference in Leopoldville, where the two men met. Afterwards, Fanon issued a stiff warning to African leaders about the nature of colonialism and the need for such leaders to fight against these alien destructive influences. In his book, African Revolution, Fanon wrote, "Africa must understand that there will not be one Africa that fights against colonialism and another that attempts to make arrangements with colonialism. Our mistake, the mistake we Africans made, was to have forgotten that the enemy never withdraws sincerely. He never understands. He capitulates, but he does not become converted. Our mistake is to have believed that the enemy has lost his combativeness and his harmfulness. If Lumumba is in the way, Lumumba disappears. Hesitation to murder has never characterized imperialism. Look at Ben Mahidi. Look at Mumie. Look at Lumumba. Our mistake is to have been slightly confused in what we did. It is a fact that in Africa today, traitors exist. They should have been denounced and fought. The fact that this is hard after the magnificent dream of an Africa gathered together unto itself and subject to the same requirements of true independence does not alter facts. Let us be sure never to forget it. The fate of all of us is at stake in the Congo." Frantz Fanon had a profound impact on leaders and members of the Black Panther Party. Indeed, before the BPP was even organized, Bobby Seale loaned his copy of The Wretched of the Earth to Huey P. Newton, who was so intrigued by the work that he read it 6 times. Because Newton was a notoriously slow but deep reader, this gives us some idea of its influence on the man. Kathleen Neal Cleaver, then the party's communications secretary, wrote years later that the first lines of Fanon's book gripped her. Quote, "National liberation, national renaissance, the restoration of nationhood to a people. Whatever may be the headings used or the new formulas introduced, decolonization is always a violent phenomenon." Frantz Fanon, although he died at an early age, impacted the lives of people all around the world. He, of course, made a tremendous impact with his writings, but beyond those were his professional and political pursuits. He was a doctor, a psychiatrist, and a revolutionary who worked with the FLN in Algeria. In his practice, he not only treated combatants who suffered from torture, but French torturers who often complained of hearing screams in their dreams. His diagnosis? Quit torturing people. He changed treatment regimens for psychiatric patients at Blida Hospital in Algeria, saying that hospitalization should be minimized as the patient should experience as much liberty at home life as possible. He learned Arabic to listen to and speak to his patients so as to protect the doctor-patient confidentiality. He worked as a clandestine cadre for the Front de Libération Nationale, the National Liberation Front, or FLN. He was expelled from Algeria and went to Tunis to become editor of Al Mujahid, the FLN organ, and was appointed director of FLN health clinics. He was named Algerian representative of the provisional government. He was an exemplary revolutionary, a freedom fighter, a thinker, and a humanist. He will be long remembered. I thank you. From death row for La Fondation Fanon, this is Mumia Abu-Jamal. How Black is Our History Month. For years, decades now, folks have celebrated Black History Month with a plethora of events. There will be movies, book readings, poetry, concerts, and the like. Coming, as it does, on the heels of the nation's celebration of the life of Martin Luther King Jr., much of what will be heard will no doubt echo that event. But Black history is far richer and far deeper than King. Reverend Dr. King, who has been edited into a safe, sweet, nonviolent, modern-day Christ-like figure and icon of peace, forgiveness, and forbearance, has himself been transformed into a one-dimensional figure which ignores his fullness as a growing, thinking, developing man. He was far more radical than many of those who now call his name are ready to admit. There will be little, if any, remembrance of the men and women who fought for freedom in far more aggressive and militant ways. While some may hear the occasional names, usually they too are softened and sweetened with time to make them safe historical morsels for white corporate consumption. It's doubtful that the name William Parker will be shouted out, even though over a century and a half ago he led the Christiana Revolt in Pennsylvania, which because of its nature sent shockwaves across the country, so much so that historians of the era, like James McPherson and Philip Foner, considered Christiana to be harbingers of the Civil War to come. Parker, his wife Eliza, and other members of the Special Secret Committee, a black self-defense group, fought against slave owners and U.S. Marshals who wanted to send people back into slavery. The Parkers and their neighbors fought with guns, machetes, and sticks. Parker and his clan of freedom fighters had to flee the U.S. to find freedom. The Christiana Revolt of 1851 should be on millions of lips during Black History Month, but there will be no movies, no special notices in the corporate press, and few scattered references to this signal event in the history of the struggle for freedom. And while we may know the name of the famous rebel, Nat Turner, how many of us actually celebrate his memory? His fight for freedom echoed around the world, for it showed that the violence of slavery would be answered by the violence of the oppressed. For what was slavery but violence, and resistance against that violence but self-defense? I doubt that the name Charles Delon will elicit the least flicker of recognition, but he was the leader of a slave revolt that rocked New Orleans in 1811. The revolt aboard the Amistad is known to many, due in part to movies. But the Amistad wasn't the only one. Ships like Little George were seized over a century before the Amistad, but today, who knows its name? Here, in 1730, some 96 captives seized the craft and in 9 days successfully sailed back to Africa. 2 years thereafter, Africans aboard the William did the same thing, set the crew adrift, and sailed back home. The late great Herbert Aptheker, in his classic American Negro Slave Revolts, recounted over 250 such rebellions against the vile slave system. Coming closer to our time, how many of us will look back, not centuries, but mere months, to the horrors and hypocrisies of Hurricane Katrina? For Black history didn't end centuries ago, and didn't begin with the Civil Rights Act. It's an ancient history, and also as present as yesterday. Katrina, the ravages not of weather, but of government. As Black Arts Movement poet, playwright, and essayist Marvin X put it eloquently in his recent Beyond Religion Towards Spirituality, we have tried their sham democratic elections to no avail, as we saw in the 2000 general election, when our votes were discounted. Between our treatment in the 2000 election and Katrina, what else do we need to know about American democracy? Or part of no, don't you understand? Both events revealed America to be nothing more than a banana republic with respect to us. We were treated worse than dogs in both respects. Black History Month. A time to remember that which the corporate culture wishes is forgotten. A time to remember rebellion, resistance, and what it means to be black in the white nation today. From Death Row, this is Mumia Abu-Jamal. These commentaries are produced by Noel Hanrahan for Prison Radio.
They are uncouth and fail to appreciate my better qualities.
I do not like melons.
They are uncouth and fail to appreciate my better qualities.
Somali woes, the perils of intervention. On the coastal outcrops of East Africa, in an area known as the Horn, Somalia sits like a sentinel, jutting into both the Gulf of Aden and the Indian Ocean. Although Somalians have recently been on the Western press because of a half-dozen sensational cases of piracy, the nation has a long and distinct history, centuries before the era of European colonialization. As long ago as the 1400s, Somalis fought border wars and battles with their neighbor to the west, Ethiopia. But like many African nations, interference by the West has meant disaster for the people. Somalia was colonized by first French, then Italians, and later the British, who split the country into separate territories. But throughout the colonization era, they kept their language, Somali, their culture, their history, and sense of Somali nationhood. In 2006, as part of the U.S. misguided war on terror, the U.S. supported an Ethiopian invasion and occupation of Somalia that transformed a bad situation into a worse one. The occupation stirred up Somali nationalism, which strengthened hardcore Islamist forces, which have spearheaded Somali resistance against the Ethiopians. Now comes word that the Ethiopians are rushing for the exits. By January 2009, they should be gone. In the aftermath of this bloody and unpopular occupation has grown a deeply radicalized and militarized generation that has no memory of schools, of peace, or of communal well-being, only of war and strife. When the U.S. supports proxy wars against nations it doesn't like, it rarely reaps anything better than bitterness. For the U.S., as one of the world's richest countries, can often afford such expenses, but it doesn't know the time or form of repayment. 7 years ago, the U.S. experienced one form of repayment when an offshoot of the Mujahideen army, which forced the Soviets out of Afghanistan, turned its sights on the U.S. on September 11th. Today, the Taliban is in full resurgence in Afghanistan, growing stronger in men, money, and materiel by the day. If September 11th has taught this nation anything, it should be that wars abroad can become strikes at home. We've not heard the last of Somalia. From death row, this is Mumia Abu-Jamal.
These commentaries are produced by Noel Hanrahan for Prison Radio.
They are unknown, fail to appreciate my better quality.
Or Tahrir Square, Part 2. In February of this year, I cautioned that the Egyptian rebellion in Tahrir Square in central Cairo and the removal of Hosni Mubarak from power was but a beginning, not an end, for democracies cannot exist under military rule. There can be one or the other, but not both. That lesson is being learned today as soldiers smash into protesters with blackjacks, kicks, punches, and open fire. Several dozen Tahrir demonstrators have died in the past week. So much for democracy. From Mubarak's fall, the military assumed the reins of power, and power can be an addictive delicacy. Once tasted, they don't want to give it up. They now are unleashing violence against the people they claim to represent. Violence, the state's attempt to cow the people back into submission. What is remarkable is the silence from the West. You know, the same folks who rained fire on Libya because the late Colonel Muammar al-Gaddafi threatened to kill his people. Could it be because the U.S. funds the Egyptian military and is as content in using it against Egyptians as it was when the Saudi military beat down the protesters in Bahrain? Egyptian blood once again flows into Tahrir Square. This time, only the leaders are different. And a military dictatorship is trying to consolidate power right before our eyes, using the blood of its people as mortar. From death row, this is Mumia Abu-Jamal.
These commentaries are recorded by Noel Hanrahan of Prison Radio. Obama in Cairo. As in the election itself, President Barack Hussein Obama benefited more by who he wasn't than who he was as he addressed an audience in Cairo. He was not George W. Bush, a man known as a mangler of words and one able to turn a speech into an instrument of torture. With quiet confidence, clear oratory, a well of knowledge, and the power of his personal story, Obama played on strings never strummed by an American president. Initially, it must be said, no other president would have tried such a stage.
So conscious are they of security threats in regions where the U.S. is regarded as an imperial bully. Where past presidents have projected arrogance, he evoked compassion. Where his predecessor evoked idiocy, he demonstrated erudition. For an act of political theater, his performance was masterful, but this was theater. Politics is ultimately about power, and as the power of the U.S. empire is on the wane, this speech was a call for Arab and Egyptian partnership in America's imperial project against violent extremism. As such, Obama continues the 9/11 project begun under Bush-Cheney, but he seeks to avoid the unilateralism of past administrations. Thus, Afghanistan, he said, was a war of necessity, while Iraq was a war of choice. Which makes it interesting why he chose Cairo as the site of this speech, or for that matter, any Arab capital. For while Egypt is a large Muslim country, it is far from the largest. That honor goes to Pakistan, which has almost 3 times Egypt's population. In fact, of the 10 countries in the world with the largest Muslim populations, Egypt comes in 7th and is the first Arab country. Most of the world's Muslims live in Pakistan, Indonesia, Bangladesh, India, and throughout Africa. But Egypt is one of the biggest recipients of U.S. foreign aid, both civilian and military. Thus, it all but guarantees a nice elite reception. But Egypt is as far from a democracy as a mouse is from the moon, a fact that Obama politely ignored. Further, why are almost all U.S. allies in the region dictatorships, where the leaders, more often than not, train their militaries and police against their own people? It says something about American trust in the very notion of democracy, does it not? Brutal, lethal internal armies, secret police, and torture are the trifecta of America's favorite allies. And these realities echo louder than the sweet and eloquent niceties of Obama's diplomacy. But in truth, Obama had them at Salam Alaikum, the universal Muslim greeting meaning peace be unto you. Peace, sad to say, is hardly a reality when one's own government is at war with its people. The Obama administration billed this as a new beginning, and that it was, given his extraordinary political and oratorical gifts. He cited the Quran twice, endorsed women's equality, and called the Israeli occupation. As for what this is a beginning to, only time will tell. From death row, this is Mumia Abu-Jamal. These commentaries are recorded by Noel Hanrahan of Prison Radio.
You cannot understand why we're in the position we're in today if you don't understand what happened in 1492. You cannot understand what happened in 1492 if you don't understand the Crusades. You cannot understand the Crusades if you don't understand the Moors. Because the very nature of the knowledge that the Crusaders, the Christian Europeans, got of the riches of the East, why Columbus was on the seas in the first place hundreds of years later, was because of what the Moors had brought into Spain.
All right, welcome back to the African History Network show. Now that was a clip of a fantastic lecture by Brother Kabahawata Kameni. It's called "The History of the Moors in Spain." That's when I first saw that. I first saw clips of that video. It blew me away. That was like I think the first one I saw of Brother Kabahawata, and I was like, man, who is this? Then I started watching other videos by him and started getting some of his videos. But that one is excellent. Now that's you actually get two lectures when you order that one. You get that one, and you also get the music of the Moors as well. And so you get both of those. It's only $14.99, so that's a fantastic lecture. And that's a good one to start out with when you're trying to learn about the history of the Moors. He ties it to ancient Kemet as well, Ethiopia. That's an excellent one because he talks about the contributions that they made into Europe also. All right. So welcome back to the African History Network show. I'm your host, Brother Michael. My guest tonight is Brother Kabahawata Kameni, formerly Dr. Booker T. Coleman. And our topic tonight is from ancient Egypt, Kemet, to the Moors to the Africans known as Moors in Spain. Okay, so we've been having a lively discussion. People in the chat room. So if you just joined us now, you know we have a lot of new listeners right now. Come on and join us in the chat room on Blog Talk Radio. It's free to have a membership with Blog Talk. If you're on Facebook, visit us on the Facebook fan page, the African History Network. I know people are on there as well, posting messages. I know Sister Sissy is listening as well. There are a lot of people tuning in right now. So we're going to continue with our discussion. Brother Kabahawata, you still there?
Hotep, brother man.
All right. You didn't know I was going to play that clip, did you?
No, I wasn't aware of that, brother, but brought back memories.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Yeah, I went through and picked out some audio clips that pertain to our discussion tonight because I wanted to play that so the family could hear it, okay? So before the break, we were talking about the Moors, and we were talking about the Africans known as Moors going into the Iberian Peninsula in 710. We were talking about them introducing things like science and medicine and literacy, actually, because at least 90% of Europeans were illiterate at that time. And we talked about the Renaissance period. Now, let's back up a quick minute here, and let's just talk about who the Moors were, and then let's go forward. And the reason why I pose that question is because a lot of times I have clips of these various videos on YouTube, and a lot of times people will say, you know, the Moors were Arabs, or the Moors were white, the Moors were not African. And the first thing I ask them is, what's the etymological derivation of the word Moor? So the first thing I do is take things back to the word and the origin of the word, okay, and then let's move forward. So let's deal with who the Moors were, and let's talk about the etymology of that word so we understand who we're talking about, if you don't mind.
Again, I encourage folk that want to get deep into this. Again, The Golden Age of the Moor, edited by Dr. Van Sertima, is an excellent book to go to. But the key is to understand that the mind of the Western male in particular, but the Western world, defines people by color.
Right.
When they come upon people, much of what is developed comes out of their first description of you, which is color.
Okay.
And so when they came upon the dark complexioned people, the Maori, Moro comes out of the Greek word that the Greeks gave to the Latin language, or the Romans that invaded them, and it means black.
Right.
It doesn't mean
Maori.
See, Arabs
now,
don't
Maori, you spell that M-A-U-R-I, Maori, right?
Maori.
Okay.
And
Maori, right.
To trace that in the Golden Age of the Moor, the gentleman breaks down the different ways in the Latin language, from French to Portuguese to Spanish to Romanian even, which is a Latin language, that the thing that you have, moreno, morena, you have words morillon, and all of these mean black olive, black grape, black woman, so that the word Moor means black, period. It doesn't mean Arab, it doesn't mean Muslim. Moor means black. Wherever it is used in Europe, it means black. It's a derivation. Moor, Negro, Ethiopian, means all is the same thing. It is a derivation of a person looking at someone who is dark complexion, who is calling them dark complexion.
Right.
So it don't mean Arab. It doesn't mean Muslim. It's not connected to religion. It just so happened that Islam was spreading across North and Northwest Africa at the same time that these Africans were moving through. And there were many Africans that were Muslim, no doubt about that.
Right.
But the Moors that came in with the technology and knowledge were Africans, not Arabs.
Exactly. Now there were Arabs that came along with them.
In small numbers.
They say again, in small numbers?
In small numbers. Like, for instance, they say Tariq crossed with 7,000 soldiers. 300 were Arab.
Okay.
6,700 were black, or indigenous African people. Small numbers. Because remember, who is an Arab at this time? Who is an Arab? What is an Arab at this time? Arab is a word that comes out of a place upon which a religion was created, and the place that it was created is a place that we today call Saudi Arabia.
Okay.
So how is an Iranian an Arab? How is an Iraqi an Arab? Arabs
actually
don't exist.
Today Iranians don't consider themselves Arabs.
And they're not. Iranians, from the ancient world, when Africans ruled Iran, they were called Medians.
Okay.
Medians. A very good book is Wonderful Ethiopians and Their Kushite Kingdom by Drusilla Dungy Houston. She puts all this down so that we can understand the ancient world. There's another gentleman out of London that wrote a book named Robin Walker. He wrote a book, When We Ruled, where he has chapters on this part of the world. Mesopotamia, the Elamites, the Sumerians. So that it is obvious that Arabs as we know them don't exist. It's just a name that we put on people. Like, for instance, what's an African American? What's a Jamaican? What's a Puerto Rican? I mean, what are you? That don't mean nothing. Puerto Rico means rich port.
Right. Rich, poor.
You know,
exactly.
I mean, what do these words mean as it develops a concept of who a people are? These are just words put on to describe a people, and then a political game is played in order for you to believe that's who they actually are. What is the Middle East?
Right.
How can you have a Middle East? If Libya is Middle East, so is Congo, because East runs north to south.
Mm-hmm.
So if something's middle, it's middle in the north, it's middle in the central, it's middle in the south. So if Libya is Middle East, then so is Congo. So is Namibia. So is Senegal, if you want to look at it like that. It's a political game that people play on the minds of people. Dr. Wade Nobles, who you mentioned earlier, says power is the ability to define someone's reality and have that person accept that definition as if it were their own.
Exactly.
And we're living a life of illusion. We must be careful. Because what is one person's illusion, if you believe it, becomes your reality.
Mm-hmm.
And so that when you're looking at the Moors, fundamentally, the Moors were the Africans that went into Europe, and when these peoples of what we might call middle complexion looked at them, heirs that might be considered mixed Visigoths with Sephardic, with early European people, when they looked at these people of very dark complexion, they came with the word that the Latin Visigoths had put on them after they had sacked the Roman Empire, because they were Germanic tribes, and they called these individuals Moors, which meant black people.
Right.
Simple as that. And the evidence of it is in the book Golden Age of the Moor, The Moors of Spain by Stanley Lane Poole. There's a lot of books out now.
Exactly.
So that, I mean, it's obvious.
Yeah, they break that down. They break that down there. I just wanted to, we have a lot of people tonight who this may be the first time they really hear about the Moors, don't know that much about them, and through the obfuscation of the phenotypical description of the Moors, what's happened, and Dr. Jose Clemente Bay talks about this, what's happened throughout history is that the word Moor has become synonymous with Muslim.
Yes.
Muslim has become synonymous with Arab.
Exactly.
So what's happened now is when you talk about Moor, people automatically start thinking about Arabs. And
that's right.
The Africans are totally taken out of the equation, but it's just through the manipulation of the depiction of them, and it's through the manipulation of Hollywood and them showing Moors as Arabs. Because I was watching the History Channel, and they had a few years ago they had a fantastic series on the barbarians. And they broke down all these Germanic tribes, the Vandals, the Visigoths, the Franks, the Vikings. They had an installment on each one of them. And they showed the Moors on horseback, and they showed them going into the Iberian Peninsula in the 8th century. And they showed all these Arabs with long hair on these horses. None of them were African. And these are the Moors. So people who don't know any better, they see it and talk about, the Moors were Arabs. This is validation that the Moors are Arabs. Seeing is believing. Okay? And I'm sitting there, I'm like, what the hell is this? Because I know better.
Yeah,
but,
exactly.
Okay. All right. So we're gonna progress now with the Moors. You were dealing with the Renaissance. Before the break, we were dealing with the Renaissance period.
Okay. Now, and also, when the Moors had brought in the riches and the resources and the foods of the East where they had traveled, they brought in something that became detrimental to us, which was sugar. Europeans got hooked on sugar.
Right. The Moors introduced that because that comes from sugar cane, and
exactly.
sugar cane was not indigenous to Europe. That was
absolutely not. And that was the cocaine of their day. They got hooked on sugar.
And that's not talked about a lot. That's not talked about a lot either.
No, it's not. It wasn't cotton that got us come to America. It was sugar.
Right. And incidentally, we introduced cotton to Europe also. It was like the 9th century.
Oh, there's no doubt about
it. We introduced cotton. Yeah, they talk about that in Golden Age of the Moor. We introduced rice, I think it was in the 9th century, and cotton in the 10th century to Europe.
Yeah, strawberries, the Valencia orange. We introduced razors. That's where the Toledo razor comes from. We introduced razors. We introduced, terrace farming. We introduced seasonal farming.
Seasonal farming, okay.
Terrace farming, where we, on the side of a hill, where we just make terraces, almost like a step pyramid. We'll grow products on the side of a hill, or we'll grow products as it comes up, because different lands bring different foods. Europeans didn't understand this.
Right.
And so being attached to these spices, and you have people like Marco Polo and other people now traveling. And what they're doing is that they're taking the exact roots out of Europe that Africans made into Europe. And so now is going to come a time when they're going to have to overcome the Moors, because the Moors are all over the seas. They have ships all over the world at this time. And the Europeans know that in order to get to be able to take the products of the world, they're going to have to overcome the Moors. So they defeat the Moors eventually.
Right. Now,
let's
talk about the sugar. Let's talk about the sugar industry and the control of the sugar a little bit, because most people, this is the first they're hearing about it. While you're talking, I'm listening to you. I'm chatting with people on Facebook about the show, and Starfly Awakening says, "Wow," because and people in the chat room talking, and this is for a lot of us. This is the first we're hearing about the Moors introducing sugar into Europe. So let's talk about the impact that sugar had and how it was used to combat the power of sugar.
It's a drug. It was the cocaine of the day.
Okay, so they got some hooked. And actually, Brother Kabahawapa talks about this in the lecture that we talked about, the history of the Moors in Spain, because he talked about how they would pay the equivalent of $25 for like a tablespoon of sugar.
Same thing like with cocaine, like a gram.
Right.
Now, also keep in mind, and again, I'm going to send you out to a book, because when you spoke with me earlier, you said that my minor in my undergrad was Caribbean Studies. While I was in one of my courses was the role of sugar in the world economy, and I studied Cuba. Okay. There's a book by a man by the name of Martin Fraginalis, Fraganalis. Fraginalis. He wrote a book.
Frag. Spell that again, please.
Fraga. 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 Nalis. Martin Fraginalis.
Okay.
He wrote a book called The Sugarcane Plan, the Cuban sugarcane plantation. There's another good book to read, Capitalism and Slavery.
Oh, yeah, Eric Williams.
Absolutely. That's another powerful book. Another powerful book is Walter Rodney, How Europe Underdeveloped Africa. Okay. Now, when you look at the economy of sugar, you see, cotton wasn't what it was, and tobacco really what it was, the drug of sugar, because sugar is a drug. It's a mind-altering drug.
Okay, and it's like an cytotoxin.
That's what they got attached to, and they needed it, and they wanted it, and that's what got them on the seas in the first place, so-called exploration, and that's why Columbus kept saying he was going to India, because that is where they believed that they could get this sugar cane, but he knew the place to go was the American hemisphere.
Okay, you're talking about Columbus.
Yeah. See, he knows what's going on, but he's a double agent for the Portuguese.
Right, and Dr. Jose Clemente Bay always said that he believes that Columbus was not lost. He believes Columbus knew where he was going.
Oh, he absolutely did know. There's letters.
And not only that,
Columbus is writing to his son, Diego.
Right.
Diego Colon.
Right. And not only that, he had Moors with him. The Moors had already created globes. They had already created atlases. They had already created atlases that told what was in different parts of the world, what type of crops and things like that were in different parts of the world. And he had Moors with them on the boat, on the ship.
And remember, Columbus is on the coast of West Africa in 1482 with the Portuguese.
With the Portuguese, right? Was he with Henry the Navigator?
No. I can't identify Henry the Navigator, but we do find him on the coast of West Africa with the Portuguese.
Mm-hmm.
And even probably before that, but we know he's there at 1482. He knows exactly where he's going because Africans have already been to America to tell him about that, and that's where he's getting the sugar from.
Exactly.
So he is using the Spanish for the money, but he's working for the Portuguese.
And not only that, he already knew that the earth was not flat because the Africans had already told him that. They created globes. He had already told him.
Yes, he had already been on the boats with the Africans that told him that. See, Columbus was a very shrewd man.
Yes.
Okay, and that's why when we go back and I tell you that the line was redrawn, when Cristobal Colon came to this part of the world, he had a friend, a Portuguese dilettante by the name of Alberigo Vespucci.
Oh, yeah.
And
America was named after.
And the second, well, actually, his name was not Amerigo.
Mm-hmm.
Jan Carew wrote a book called Fulcrums of Change. And in this book, he talks about how Alberigo Vespucci came upon indigenous people in Nicaragua who called themselves Los Amerisques. And Los Amerisques is a Mayan word that means the breath of God. It means the wind.
Okay.
And he used that as a synonymous concept for God. He changed his name from Alberigo Vespucci to Amerigo Vespucci because of his contact with Los Amerisques.
Okay.
Now, this is in the book Fulcrums of Change, Jan Carew. The reason why the line is redrawn is in order to push the line of demarcation more to the west. And that's why Brazil is the largest country in South America, and it speaks Portuguese.
Right.
He did that for the Portuguese he was working for.
Okay.
The Spaniards
change the demarcation.
Exactly. Now, the other thing that people don't talk about is that on his fourth voyage, Cristobal Colon is arrested by the Spanish police. Brought back to Spain, tried for treason, found guilty, and he put in jail.
Right. Now, why was he tried for treason? What was the treason?
He was working for the Portuguese. He was working. He was giving the Portuguese the main information while he was telling the Spain different stories. That's why you have the idea that he got lost. He didn't get lost. He knew exactly where he was going because the Portuguese knew where to go because they were on the waters before the Spaniards were.
Right. He even had, and a good short book about this is Christopher Columbus and the African Holocaust, Slavery and the Rise of European Capitalism by Dr. John Henry Clark. Because I read that book years ago, brother, and he dealt in there how Columbus had his crewmen sign documents saying that, don't tell people that we didn't go to this place. We actually went to that place. He said he would cut their tongues out if they revealed where they actually went. Things like that. And Dr. Clark always said that there had to be two people named Cristobal Colon because one person could not have done so much dirt. Something to that effect. That's what he said.
Yeah. Absolutely. Now, let's put this in context and bring it up to today.
Okay.
Europe finds its ways onto the waters. It travels all around the world. It finds its sugar plantations.
Mm-hmm.
It finds that it can put sugar in rum and liquor. It finds concepts of tobacco.
Okay.
It's all in the Caribbean going on right now. Now, what's going to happen is that indigenous people are not going to work for the Europeans, so they begin to enslave Africans, and it's Pope Martin V who blesses the enslavement of African people for not having souls, and that they should be brought to work so that they can save their souls.
Now, who was this again? Pope Martin V?
Yeah, Martin V.
Okay, what year was this?
I'm not sure. I've seen 1505.
Right, around that time. Yes, around that time. There was another Papa Bull that came out.
Exactly. See, because already a lot of the Taino and the Lucayo, the Arawak indigenous, and the Carib have already been decimated in the Caribbean.
Exactly. They've already been killed off. Exactly.
Okay, and not by warfare, but just by disease that Europeans brought with them.
Right. Exactly. Right,
I mean, whole
right.
villages would just fall out just when Europeans would come through.
Right. Right.
Now, what happens is that the Caribbean has their thing, and the United States has their thing. There's the wars. Spanish has their islands. The French have their islands. The Dutch have their islands, and South America and the Dutch and the British and the French also have the 13 colonies, so to speak, going up into Canada.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the enslavement of African people brings them to this part of the world. The agricultural system that's in place begins to improve because Africans, being industrious as they are, begin to find ways to do the job quicker. So things like the cotton gin and other things are invented and created by black people.
Right. That was around, the cotton gin was around 1790, right around 1790, the cotton gin, somewhere around there, yeah.
See, we're moving up in time.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? These inventions are created, but there's a problem.
Right.
Because what might take 3 human beings to do in 2 weeks now takes a machine 2 hours to do.
Right.
So now you have mass production of things. See, we, African people in this hemisphere, we were the first industrial revolution.
Right.
We were the then we created machines to help us, and that's going to usher in by 1820, 1830, that's going to usher in Europeans seeing mass production is going to stifle the transatlantic trade. So you're going to see England forbidding enslavement of African people. You're going to see a lot of, but America's not going to do it.
Mm-hmm. Well, in 1800, when the Constitution was signed in 1787, they put the clause in there that they would stop the importation of slaves 20 years later, which was 1807. So did they stop the? So after that, it really increased the need to have your studs to produce slaves internally as opposed to exporting them. Did they still continue to import slaves after 1807?
To a certain extent, it became like what the drug trade is today. It wasn't legal, but it was still being done.
Okay, well, it probably wasn't as much, but it was still.
But you see, they saw what was coming.
Right.
Okay. Now here's the problem.
Mm-hmm.
In Europe, received its raw materials from the Caribbean.
Right. Right.
The clothing, the foods, and in Europe, that's where they had the factories.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Here in the United States, the South was the agricultural, while the North was the industrial, where they had the machines and the factories.
Okay, right.
Now, with so much material,
on The Tonight Show, Late Night with Conan O'Brien, and various MTV and VH1 programs.
Our history, for some reason, it becomes offensive to people. So we have to stop being afraid to tell what our true history is.
Best-selling author Tariq Nasheed is determined to uncover the real truth about untold history.
It's necessary to destroy a man's mind in order to maintain control of him. If a man knows who he is and continues that into his legacy, to his children, then you have problems controlling him.
Interviewing leading scholars and historians, discussing topics omitted from modern history.
Only a people who haven't learned how to respect themselves will let someone suggest themselves that they forget about their history.
Hidden Colors, the untold history of people of Aboriginal, Moor, and African descent. The groundbreaking documentary that challenges conventional knowledge.
I don't really think it's hidden. It's there. It's just that they're not allowing us to understand.
Who are you? No. Don't tell me Negro. What were you when you were a white man named you a Negro? And when were you? And when did you have? What was yours? What language did you speak then?
Did you do anything to hurt that girl?
Truth, justice, power to explain. Our common ground. Speaking truth to power and ourselves. Justice, resistance. Hi, this is Janice Graham inviting you to join me each Saturday evening, 10 p.m. Eastern Time. Our common ground. Speaking truth to power and ourselves. I'll be listening for you. Each Saturday, 10 p.m., Blog Talk Radio. Our common ground. Celebrating 20 years on the air as the Black voice and thought sanctuary.
Are you retired from the U.S. military with 20 years of greater time in service and you are a disabled veteran rated 90% or less? You may be eligible to amend your income tax returns with the IRS for the past 3 years, allowing you to receive a sizable refund. G&G Associates has assisted numerous retired disabled veterans receive thousands of dollars in tax refunds. It will cost you nothing to see if you qualify. Call us at 877-220-8333 or visit our website at www.gngassociates.net.
All right, welcome back to the African History Network show. I'm your host, Brother Michael Imhotep. Our guest tonight, if you're just now tuning in, you've been missing a fantastic show. It'll be available on the podcast also. Our guest tonight is nationally certified school psychologist, Dr. Umar Johnson. And we're talking about the psychoacademic war on black boys. And also, before we get off the air, I got to let everybody know, December 29th at the Dexter Elmhurst Center in Detroit, Michigan, that they're doing a Kwanzaa celebration, the Kepler Ross Study Group, 6 p.m. to 9 p.m., Detroit, Michigan. Keynote speaker will be Brother Benachi Montgomery. We've had him on the African History Network show also. He's an expert on the metal netter as well, so definitely come check that out. And don't forget the pre-Kwanzaa celebration tomorrow, December 9th in Detroit, Friday, December 9th at the Coleman A. Young Municipal Center, 13th floor. Located at 2 Woodward Avenue. Join Wayne County Commissioner Bernard Parker and City of Detroit Council Member Joanne Watson, Queen Mother. Joanne Watson, she was made a Queen Mother by Dr. Leonard Jeffries. This is a citywide Kwanzaa celebration. This is a free event. African music, drummers, dancers, vendors, food. The African History Network will be there as well with a wide selection of African history DVD lectures and CDs. So come out and support us. So come and check this out. This is a free event, okay? Let's bring Brother Umar back on. We're going into rapid fire round. So each caller will get 1 minute. Please write down your questions. We try and get as many people in as possible, okay? Okay. Let's see. Brother Umar, you there? Let me see. Okay. Screen's freezing up a little bit. Okay. Screen's freezing up a little bit, brother. All right. Okay, that's cool. I got you. Let's go to the 214. Okay, call in the 214. Welcome to the African History Network show. Tell us your name, where you're calling from, and go ahead with your question.
Peace and love, brothers. This is So Love Shabazz. I'm calling from Dallas, Texas. We're definitely very excited to have our brother here for our show, February the 17th, Love for a Black Brother. My question is, peace and love, blessings, brother, is can you speak to the psychological effects that offering love to our men and our boys would do to our nation?
It would do a whole lot, because so many black men are suffering in silence. A lot of black men are depressed. I think that there is a invisible depression that is facing a great deal of black men. I think that's one of the reasons why you see so much suicide, so much homicide, so much domestic violence, so much aggression. Black men are lonely. They're crying out for help. And many of us are victims of our own ego. Many black men are victims of our own ego because we have created this persona that has us looking like we're tough and we're big and bad, but in the inside we're hurt. But we're too afraid to go and talk to somebody because we don't want to appear weak and vulnerable. And as a result of that, black men are being destroyed not only from the outside by white supremacy, but also in the inside. And so sisters have to recognize that and not be too hard on the brothers. Don't beat the brothers down. It's okay to be honest. We don't want our sisters to stop being honest. If a man is mistreating you, if he's not taking care of his responsibilities, then you tell him that. But to berate men to your family and berate men to your girlfriends and berate men to other men, there's nothing good that's going to come out of that. So sisters, I need you to back off just a little bit. Back the hell off a lot of these men and give them some breathing space, because too many black men got to fight white racism and then come home and fight the white racist who's living inside of his wife's body.
Yes.
In her mind, yes.
Yes. That's so true. Thank you, beloved. I appreciate that.
Excellent, sister. How'd you find out about the show tonight, sister?
On Facebook.
Okay, excellent. Okay, sister, thanks for calling in, okay?
You're welcome.
Keep listening to the show. Okay, peace. Okay, family, let me let this know. Okay, we have Brother Umar to the top of the hour for about the next 5 minutes. We're going to keep broadcasting, though. We're going to run over.
If we run over, we cool. If we run over, we cool.
Oh, we're cool. Okay, we'll run over a little bit with you then, Brother Umar. I don't want to wear you out, brother. We'll run over a little bit with you. If we stop live streaming at the top of the hour in about 4 minutes. If you want to continue to listen to the rest of the show live, you have to call in now to listen by phone. The number is 914-338-1375. 914-338-1375. Because in 3 minutes and 30 seconds, we stop live streaming. If you listen by internet, you won't be able to continue to hear the show. You'll have to listen to it in its entirety on the podcast. 914-338-1375. Okay, let's go to the, now brother Jimmy in the 502, I just talked to him. He wanted to know, brother, your lecture in New York that you're getting ready to do, will that be available on your website? I guess the lecture, December 15th. Okay. So, Brother Jimmy, check out his website for that lecture sometime after that. Okay. Let's go to the 410. Call on the 410. Welcome to the African History Network show. Tell us your name and where you're calling from.
Peace and blessings. This is Mia Miata, the Neo Soul, Nina Simone, and I'm calling from Tubman City, Baltimore, Maryland.
Be more
and
than
I would just like to say, a peace and blessings, Dr. Umar and Brother Imhotep. Thank you so much for taking my call. I would first want to just start with a quote by Dr. Umar Johnson's ancestor, Frederick Douglass, that knowledge makes a man unfit to be a slave. And I just want to, if it's okay with you, Brother Umar, Dr. Umar, if I could just speak some words over your life, because if you listen to this man speak about his agenda and his what he's going to be doing over the next few months, it's very intensive. So the Spirit just asked me to speak some words over your life. So in the name of the Most High Creator, in the name of our ancestors, the Spirit guides, and our ascended masters, I would like for you to bless this man. He is a modern-day crusader. He is doing the work of our ancestors, and we just want to bless him. We want to thank the Uni-verse, the Uni meaning one, verse meaning word. One word equals love, because this man speaks love, and he does works of love. We just want to ask you to protect him as he goes throughout the country, in the highways and the byways, and he gets on the plains, because he is an awesome man of God, and we just love him. collectively, brothers and sisters all over the country, we want to receive you in love. We just want to thank the Creator for you. So I just want to say that you're an awesome man. You really are, Brother Umar. And I worked personally with you in a couple events, and I'm just so proud of the work that you're doing. So with that being said, I just want to leave you with a little song that I wrote. It's a spiritual. For those of you who don't know, my name is Nia Miata. I'm the Neo-Soul Simone, and I'm a neo-spiritualist. And I wrote this spiritual in the tradition of our ancestors about 4 years ago. And I'm just going to sing a little bit of it. And it goes, rise, young man, rise. Rise, young man, rise. Once you know the truth, my son, you can't go back to lies. This man speaks the truth, so once we know it, we can't go back to lies. Thank you so much for taking my call.
Right.
Thank you. Peace and blessings.
Thanks, sister. Thanks.
Thanks, sis.
You're
Thank
welcome.
you
for calling in.
Yeah, beautiful voice. I got to see who that sister can blow. I expect her to do big things the next couple of years.
Okay, excellent. Okay, we're going to stop live streaming in 30 seconds. If you want to listen to the rest of the show live, call in now, 914-338-1375. That's 914-338-1375. Brother Umar has been so gracious enough to stay on. For those who we are losing, listen to the podcast, blogtalkradio.com/the African History Network show. We'll be back Monday night. Okay, let's go to the, where are we going now? Let me scroll down and let's go to the 317. Okay, call in at 317. Welcome to the African History Network show. Tell us your name, where you're calling from.
Hotel family.
Hotel brother, how you doing tonight?
I'm all right. It's Quiz, aka Mr. Mac, man. You know, Indiana, Indianapolis. Calling me and listening, been following y'all for a while. Y'all doing a real good job. I was wondering when, y'all was going to come to Indiana. I ain't heard nothing about it. Nobody talking about coming to Indiana. It's conscious hearing black people here too, man. It ain't just cornfields.
I was just there about 3 months ago.
Oh, yeah?
With Dr. Jomo Mutegi. Yes, sir. Y'all have the museum there. There's a high school connected to a museum. The Frederick Douglass Museum, is it?
Right, okay. Yeah, I
was there 3 months ago. We had a strong turnout, too. You probably didn't get the word, but I'm supposed to be coming back, though. I ain't got a date, but I'm supposed to be coming back. I believe the black psychologists are bringing me back there.
Oh, okay. I appreciate it, man. Y'all keep up doing that thing, man.
Okay, brother.
Thank you.
And then how'd you find out about the show tonight?
Website, Blog Talk Radio. I'll be checking you out.
Excellent, brother. And then follow us on Blog Talk on our page. Click on the follow button and follow us on Blog Talk to update you about our show. And then visit our website also, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. Okay.
Okay, brother.
Okay, brother. Thanks for calling in from Indiana, brother.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Hotel. All right. Let's go to the 912. All right. Calling the 912. Welcome to the African History Network show. Tell us your name, where you're calling from. Calling the 912. Are you there? Going once, going twice. Maybe they're just listening. Going once, going twice, going 3 times. Okay, they're just listening. And then after, once we wrap up the interview with Brother Umar, I'm going to talk about Mumia Abu-Jamal. I mentioned it briefly at the beginning of the show. We're going to do an update on this brother and him being removed from death row also. Okay. Let's see. Let's go to the where we going now? Let's go to the 850. Okay, call on the 850. Welcome to the African History Network show. Tell us your name, where you're calling from.
He defeats his uncle Seth and restores order to the world and sets up and establishes his kingdom on earth, while the pharaohs with the pharaohs as the guardians of Ma'at. Now it's interesting, brother, because when you look at the story, The Lion King, put out by Walt Disney put that out?
I think it's Disney, yeah.
Yeah, the same thing, man. Same story, okay, in animated form, but it was animals, because you got these 2 lions, okay. I can't remember their names. I think I saw it one time, but the father, Mustafa, yes, and then his brother, the jealous lion, which would be Set, the negative or evil energy. And of course, when Mustafa's son grows up, he defeats his evil uncle. So this whole thing, man, comes again from the story of ancient Egypt. Again, I repeat, there was no Cain and Abel. So we really don't need to spend a lot of time wondering where did Cain get his wife from? You know, that's the kind of question we have to.
Actually, I told you before where the wife came from, brother. See, people have to understand the books that were banned from the Bible. So if they go to history.com, that's the official website of the History Channel. They have a 2-part documentary called Banned from the Bible, and they deal with the very they were banned from the Bible. Okay, in the Book of Jubilee, which is one of the books banned from the Bible, they tell you that Adam and Eve actually had 9 children, not 2, 9 children. Cain and Abel were 2 of 9 children. After Cain kills Abel, he goes to the land of Nod and takes his sister named Awan, A-W-A-N. And it's with his sister Awan that he copulates and reproduces. Okay, and that's in the Book of Jubilee, and that's one of the reasons why that Book of Jubilee was removed from the Bible. That was in the New Testament.
Because of the incest.
Yeah. I can't remember if it was New Testament or Old Testament, but that's one of the reasons why it was from the Bible. Yeah, and also a lot of people don't know that the New Testament is older than the Old Testament. Also, New Testament goes back.
I was going to say, man, because you know, actually the Old Testament. And see, this is why it's important for us to understand what really happened in history. Okay?
Exactly.
One of the things that I try to get people to understand is when the invaders went into Africa, okay, and tried to destroy, I take that back, not try, they destroyed, okay, the libraries of Africa. And you always have those people who are still there who know that this liar is not telling me the truth. So the lie wasn't catching hold as it should. Okay? Even after the 4 major ecumenical councils, it still wasn't catching hold as it should. So what the Europeans had to do, man, is they had to say, okay, since these people are not buying the lie that we made up, okay, let's just black out everything. Okay, let's black out everything. Let's confiscate all literature, confiscate all the books, pass laws that if there's anyone found with copies or writings of the truth, they will be put to death. Okay, and so in 500 AD, this is what happened. Okay, and for a period of 1,000 years, from 500 AD to 1500 AD, was the suppression of African information. It was so important to understand that. I mean, these people destroyed our libraries, and you know, I should say stole our libraries. I'm not going to say because the stuff that is accredited to Aristotle and Plato and all this kind of stuff, this is information that was stolen from us. And what we need to understand is by the time after a 1,000-year period goes by, okay, these invaders, these destroyers, these people who want to control the thinking of man have now come up with their version of what went on in history. Okay?
Exactly.
And then just before coming out of this 1,000-year period, they come out with a printing press. Okay? And the first Bible printed on this printing press is called the Gutenberg Bible. Well, what do you think was in that Bible? The lies that were created over that 1,000-year period.
And see, with the Gutenberg press coming out about 1436, now they can mass produce it. Before then, all the Bibles were handwritten. See, now they can mass produce it now. So this is what we have to understand, and mass produce the lie. So,
exactly. And of course, the invader is always going to tell his version of the story. You see? So what they do is they write themselves into history. You know, I mean, because if you do the research, I tell everybody, you know, do the research on the Khazars, do the research on the Ashkenazim, okay, and you'll find that, you know, before the late 6th century AD, there is no record of a Jew or a Hebrew anywhere on this planet.
Say that again, brother, because you see, we have no offense to anybody. I have people all different spiritual systems and religions listen to the show, but I hear people claiming that the Hebrew Israelites were there in Egypt thousands of years ago, and Let's talk about that for a minute, brother.
Well, the truth is, of course they're going to say that, but according to who? You see, not according to factual data. I mean, a lot of people. I mean, it's like the story I told about the tribe of in South Africa, and they believed that the stream, the little stream of water that flowed through the village, was God. Not. I mean, and how did they come to such a thinking? Because one day, one of the elders got up early in the morning before sunrise and was walking through the village. And as the sun came up, the rays of the sun reflecting off the water running through the stream was so beautiful. He said, "I see God in the stream." And he went back telling how beautiful his experience was. Well, 200 years later, the stream became God because people didn't get it right.
Distorted. Right,
yeah,
right.
You see what I'm saying? So generations later, you got people in this village going out every morning, bowing down and worshiping this stream. You see? So, if they hold to the view that they were in Egypt, then you need to find out according to who. Because the brothers and sisters who are making those claims today know good and well they have no valid proof of that. Okay? Everything that they're saying, they was told to them by somebody. And see, brother, what we have to do is we got to get to the place of, I know we love literature. We love to turn to literary sources as though it is really proof. Okay?
As if it's actual history.
Right. What we must understand is just because something is in print, just because it's something written, it doesn't mean it's true. It simply means, like the Bible says, when it talks about Abraham, in Galatians, the 4th chapter, verses 22 to 24, it says, "It is written." Okay? It doesn't mean he actually lived. It simply means it is written. And so I say that because there was a point, man, in my growth and my development, brother, that, man, I had done so much reading. I had done so much, man, I became drunk with oh my God, literature, man, and it got to the place, brother, I said, you know what, okay, enough of the books. Enough books for now. I need to, because I had read George Wells, oh my God, E.A. Wallace Budge, you name it, man, Tom Harper, of course, Gerald Massey. I did so much reading now. I said, you know what? I'm reading people's commentary.
Right.
I need to go see for myself. Okay? Because as long as you're limited to literary evidence, you don't have proof.
Right. Exactly.
And it's so important for us to understand that. You see?
Exactly.
And I say that as a student and as a scholar. Okay? Literary evidence is, and people ask me all the time, where can I find that, what you just said? Where can I find that, what you just said? And it's deep because sometimes it gets offensive to me when they say that. And I'll tell you why I say sometimes it gets offensive. Because I'm sending you to pick up a book, okay, that somebody who may not even have the academia I have wrote. But you're going to believe it because you read it in a book, okay? But because I said it wasn't good enough. And so we get hung up on literary writing as proof of a thing. And we must understand all literature is written by somebody, which means that they're only documenting their opinion or their commentary about a fact. You see what I'm saying?
Right.
So we have to get to the place, and this is one of the reasons why we take people to Egypt with us, man. So they can actually make that trip and see for themselves the temples, tombs, and pyramids, and the inscriptions and the reliefs of ancient Kemet. So they can see for themselves that which has been in existence, grave sites, okay? Grave sites, man, that is 10, 15, 20,000 years old. It's important to understand. I don't take people to Egypt so that we can fall in love with Egypt.
Correct.
You follow me? There's some of us out here who are in love with Egypt. I'm not in love with Egypt, man. I'm in love with the evidence that's there.
Right. So we can Sankofa, we can use that information to go forward and reclaim what was stolen from us and take our rightful place back. Not to just talk about what we did and we're living in projects today.
Thank you, brother. Thank you. And you know, it really gets, you know, I see many of our brothers and sisters, man, they, you know, you would actually think that they grew up in Egypt, man. You would think that they grew up in Egypt, you know, 12,000 years ago. You know, walking around trying to dress up like an ancient Egyptian, and they don't even know how they dressed 12,000 years ago. We're still getting those concepts from the media and what the media is showing us.
Right.
You know,
right. A lot of that. Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
You know, so we need to understand, okay, the evidence that is there in the Nile Valley of our ancient past. We need to understand that the Nile Valley Africans, like I said, you know, their contributions was really toward the end of our greatness. I mean, brother, oh my God, you know, we need to understand that.
Because Ethiopia is the grandmother to Kemet or Egypt.
Yes.
Nubia is the mother. So we have to understand it. And then Uganda and Tanzania, they existed before Ethiopia. So we have to understand
brother, that's what I'm saying. Yes.
Right,
you know,
right.
I mean, as our warrior scholar and father of many of us, Dr. Yosef Ben Yakin, I heard you talking about him earlier. Dr. Ben says in his research, man, he found that the Twa dates back, that have a history, man, that dates back almost 450,000 years, brother.
Yep.
You know?
Because we know at least 100,000 years of our history has been stolen. And if people Google this article, it's from the New York Times, and I'm going to try to pull this up, but it talks about, I found this out from Dr. David Imhotep, who wrote the book, The First Americans Were Africans, Documented Evidence. And I've interviewed him on the show. We've had him here in Detroit also. But he deals with an African presence in the Americas going back 56,000 years.
Yes,
so
sir,
there's an article from the New York Times, February 15th, 2010. Google this article. It's called On Crete, C-R-E-T-E. On Crete, New Evidence of Very Ancient Mariners. And it talks about an African presence on the Greek island of Crete, which has been an island for 5 million years, an African presence on the Greek island of Crete going back 130,000 years, and it says it's causing them to have to rethink everything because they thought that maritime skills and sailing, things like that, go back between 10,000 to 12,000 years. But this is causing them to have to rethink everything. Okay,
I know it, man.
February 15, 2010.
Mm-hmm. You know, Brother Michael, one of the things when I'm sharing information with those who are transitioning, and I try to get them to understand, you know, how long we've been here.
Yes, there you go.
I mean, I can't answer that question because no one knows. But I can say this, okay, as credible evidence of how long we've been here. All we have to do is ask the question, who gave astrology and astronomy to the world?
Right.
Our ancestors did. Right? Now, the astronomy is the study of the heavenly bodies, the stars, the planets, the moon, and so forth. Astrology is governing your behavior by the movement of those heavenly bodies, such as when to plant your crops, when to have children, da-da-da-da-da. See?
Right.
Now, here's a deep thing, man. It takes 25,000 years for one stellar revolution to take place.
You're talking about the precession of the equinox?
Well, no. What I mean is whatever position the stars are in the sky tonight, it takes 25,000 years for them to come back to that same exact point.
Yeah. I think you're talking about the precession of the equinox.
Yeah, you follow what I'm saying?
Yeah.
25,000 years for one stellar revolution. Now, how many stellar revolutions does it take before a people begin to master the movement of the heavenly bodies?
Yeah, you have to track it at least twice to realize it's not a fluke. And we had already discovered that, the precession of the equinox. We had already discovered that.
Yeah, man.
You know, so exactly.
So this is, our people had mastered. I mean, those who go to Canada, you can see, you know, one of the world's earliest observatories right there at the Temple of Dendera. Okay,
right.
The Temple of Hathor in Dendera, man. You can actually see the stairs leading to the observatory. Okay, where they studied the stars. So our people had mastered the movement of the stars, man. So, you know, that ought to give us an idea. This is the kind of stuff that our young people need to be taught. So it can give them some self-esteem, brother. You know, because this whole stuff that black people didn't make no contributions to anything. See, that's the kind of stuff we need to be eradicating.
Exactly. And let me get to a couple more questions, and we're gonna get to the phone lines here because we're just going, brother. Time is escaping from us, unfortunately. so callers on the phone line, we're gonna come to you in a few minutes here. We'll go to the 864, the 267, and the 803. The phone line's lit up, and bro, we're gonna have to do part 2 of this, man. The next couple of weeks.
Oh, brother, anytime. You know that.
Yeah, we're going to have to do part 2, man, because I have other questions. We just aren't going to be able to get them all in tonight. And next week, brother, on the show, I have Booker T. Coleman on the show next week.
My brother. Yes, sir, brother. You know, man, you know, we still talk about his speaking force at the African Village, brother. That brother.
Yeah, for the convocation.
So awesome. So yeah, he spoke for us in Detroit. He was
exactly for the convocation.
And for the convocation in Detroit when it was there. Yes.
Right. So for those who've seen Hidden Colors 1 and Hidden Colors 2, Professor Booker T. Coleman, one of my teachers, is going to be on the African History Network show next Thursday, 8 p.m. to 11 p.m. We'll have him on, we're on 8 p.m. to 11 p.m. So tune in next Thursday. Booker T. Coleman, also known as Kabahai Wata Kamene. And Dr. Ray Higgins is one of my teachers also. Don't want to disrespect him, but Booker T. is another one of my teachers also. Okay, let's talk quickly about Serapis Christos. And you mentioned the ecumenical councils. Okay, so I want to kind of get some clarification on this here. What's the link between Serapis Christos and Jesus the Christ? And people, hold your circles up.
I love it. My boy said, people, hold your circles up.
Because I already know most people have never heard of Serapis Christos, man. Or Serapis, they never heard of it. And people, you can go to answers.com and type in Serapis, search for Serapis, Serapis, search for Serapis. You can search for Serapis. It's going to give you some information about Serapis and show you the bust of his head. But let's talk about this.
That's right. And it's right there in the British Museum right now.
Yes,
as we speak, you know, and so that's important to understand. One of the things that's important for people to understand is where did the idea of Christ even come from, or a Christ Savior come from, as people even say, you know, the Lord Jesus Christ is our Savior. Where did this come from? Well, first of all, the word Christ is from the word Christos, which simply means one who is anointed. The word Savior, we need to understand, it goes all the way back to a European pharaoh. In fact, it was the first European pharaoh, known as Ptolemy the First, his Lagi, L-A-G-I. His nickname, the name that he gave himself, was Soter, S-O-T-E-R. Okay? Now, those of you out there who are listening who are you've been trained in Christian philosophical and theological thought, you know that the word soter is the root word of the doctrine called soteriology.
There you go.
Okay, the doctrine of soteriology means the doctrine of salvation. So the word soter means savior. This pharaoh, literally, he coined himself the savior. And what's deep is he wanted the Egyptian priest to coronate him, as a Sarah, as a son of God, as a Christ.
Right.
Okay, and the Egyptians would not do that because they said, no, this is not for you. Okay, you don't belong here. You're an illegitimate pharaoh. You come here. You're an invader, and so forth. What have you? Now, what he did is those who refused to comply with his wishes, he cut their head off. Real simple. You know, he just put them to death. Okay, and then he found another group, and said, okay, you guys consecrate me to the office of Son of God. And they said no. Well, it didn't take long, okay, for him to find a group of sellout Melkite Coptic Egyptians who said, well, okay, anything to keep us from being put to death. Sure, we'll make an image in your honor. We'll coronate you. So what they did is they took the Apis, okay, the bull, symbol of the bull, Apis, and they also took the symbol of Osar, okay, and they combined the two, and you have the word Osiris or Serapis. Now, the image that they made, okay, in honor of Ptolemy I, okay, is the Serapis image. One of the things that I tell people, and this became the Christ, okay, that they worshiped. In fact, those who, I believe it was Hadrian wrote a letter to Sylvanus, okay, in 135, I believe it was, BC.
Something like that, yeah.
And he was explaining about the followers of the people in Egypt who were following Serapis called themselves the bishops of Christ. And the reason for that is because Serapis was known as Serapis Christos, okay, or the Savior, Christ the Savior. Now, what's deep here is this dude named Arius, okay, started having a problem.
Bishop Olivia.
Yes, Bishop Olivia. Okay, Arius started telling people, "Whoa, you guys are going too far. Y'all are literally deifying this image." Okay, and he began to tell the people, it's just an image. There's nothing deified about it. It's not to be worshipped. It's not to be held in high esteem. And of course, religion had made it such an issue. And of course, we're talking some time later, and you had these followers of Serapis. And one of there's a movie that I recommend to people, and it talks about this, and I can't recall it, man. I think it's called, is it Agora? Are you familiar with that, Mike?
Yeah, I think that's the name of the movie. Yeah, I think that's
Agora.
it.
Okay, yeah. Agora. Those who are watching, those who are listening right now, if you have Netflix, you can pull it up on Netflix. Watch it. And you'll see, they tell you even in their movie that they produce, okay, that the Roman Catholic Church committed horrific crimes in Egypt, okay, and put people to death. Now, of course, everybody in the movie is just about as white, but of course, there was a sister there by the name of Hypatia, okay, who's an astronomer. She was a major influence in the libraries of Alexandria. Well, the Roman Catholic Church atrociously put her to death. Okay, again, that problem with that female principal. But when the movie Agora opens, that's what I was about to say. When the movie Agora opens, the first image that you see in the movie is a giant statue of Serapis and people honoring and worshiping Serapis. Okay, so they're actually telling you in the movie that there was a Christ before a Jesus. And that Christ was Serapis. So when people say Christianity existed in Africa before a Jesus, they're correct, okay? But what they're not catching is that this Christianity was the followers of Serapis Christos.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
So of course, at this division that was being caused by Arius. It was causing such a problem, man, that Constantine called a council meeting. And it's interesting, and this is in 325 AD, okay, I'm losing my thought here.
First Council of Nicaea, 325, yeah.
And to make a long story short, it was at this council meeting that by order of Constantine, that Serapis, the bearded figure, Serapis, became Jesus Christos, or Jesus Christ. Okay, and that's what happened, man. So there was no Jesus before the Nicene Council. We need to understand that. There was no Jesus. Right. In fact, there was no Jesus, period, before the 16th, 17th century, because there was no J on the planet. So there was no Jesus Christos before 325 AD.
Right, and Serapis Christos was introduced in 320 BC, And so people are on the 320 BC, Serapis Christos, meaning Christ the Savior. Now, the point of clarification I want to get, because I know you've read The Historical Origin of Christianity by Dr. Walter Williams, and I've read it also. I've talked to him. I know he's been at the African villages, done lectures there, things like that. And the point of clarification I'm trying to get is he talks about how at the First Council of Nicaea, Serapis Christos was interjected into the First Holy Trinity of Asar, Aset, and Heru to take the place of Heru. And then later at the Council of Ephesus in 431, the Theotokos is created, and then Serapis is transformed into the Messiah.
Which is the Theotokos is the Mother of God.
Mother of God, yes. Virgin Mary, the Mother of God, and she gives birth to the Messiah. And it's in 431 AD at the Council of Ephesus, and I know you know all about the Council of Ephesus, that he's transformed into the Messiah. And, he's like part human, part divine, things like that. Are you familiar with that?
I'm familiar with Walter Williams' book and the presentation and the order sequence that he puts there. And one of the things that, because we are definitely on the air, let me say this: Professor Walter Williams is my elder. That man has been studying almost as long as I have been on the planet.
Yes.
You see what I'm saying? And so I'm sure that he may have some research that I do not have. So let me give weight to what he says in this particular instance, because number one, as I said, he's my elder. And I respect my elder on that level because it was actually it was part of his work that helped free me from the lie.
Oh no, I know, because he told me about it, and I've talked to you about it before. I saw the lecture that he did there. I was just trying to get clarification because I've read his book. I've interviewed him a few times on the show. He's been here in Detroit doing lectures. So I was just trying to just get that clarification. But I totally understand that. And Jesus Christos was what he was later called, because the letter J was not created till 1630 A.D. The letter J. And for those who want information on that, chapter 9 of the Historical Origin of Christianity deals with the whole origin of the letter J, and it's derived from the letter I. So people have to understand this. A lot of people don't know this information. Okay. All right.
Yes.
Now,
you know what's really sad, Mike? I got to say this. The information that we're dropping, one of the things that I feel in my spirit right now is it's almost unbearable for a lot of the listeners right now. We
got a ton of people listening, so I know some of them are. But the way we present it, brother, we aren't shoving it down their throat. We aren't calling people names and cussing and screaming at people, things like that. So we're presenting it in a format that, even though it may not be what they want to hear, is still tolerable, and we're giving them resources to go do more information to verify what we're talking about.
Yes. And what I wanted to say to those who are listening, who may be hearing this for the first time, and what you're hearing is painful, I want to reiterate, as we said at the top of the program, we're not here to be insensitive. We're not here to we don't want you to think that we are not caring, of the pain that you're feeling right now. Trust me, I know what you're feeling because I was there, So those of you who are having a little difficulty with what we're saying, we're not asking you to accept what we're saying. We're asking you to listen to what we're saying, make notation of what we're saying if you're having a problem with it, and go do your own research, and digest this information as you can. Some cannot. I mean, look at some people learn faster than others. Look at our children in school. You have some children what are called motivated learners, which means they're classified as gifted because they learn faster than others. Then you have some people that just slow learners or underachievers. And the same process with this information that we're handing out right now. So to those people out there who are hurting because your spirit is telling you that we're telling you the truth, which means that your spirit is also telling you that you've been lied to. That's a painful reality. Okay? That's a very painful reality. So So I just wanted to take a moment and just say to those out there who may be hurting right now, please understand, we're not trying to hurt you. We're not trying to hurt you. We're trying to set you free from the lies that got all of our people tied up. You know?
Exactly. And for those, we have a lot of new listeners tonight. Also, we're here every Thursday, the African History Network show. We have fantastic shows every Thursday. If you visit our website, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com, we have a lot of information there, video clips, we have DVDs, they're available also. That helps support us and stay on the air, because it's not free for us to do what we do. This is very expensive to run the African History Network. It's very expensive for Brother Ray to run WBLR.com and the African Village. So I'm preaching to the choir, literally, brother.
But you know what, man? I know that you didn't mean to do this, but brother, I gotta do this just for give me 30 seconds.
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
Okay. And I want to say this in behalf of you, Mike, behalf of myself, Brother Keedy, and so many others out here. Okay.
Oh yeah.
You know, we have a habit of doing. Those who are listening, we have a habit of listening and not supporting. And it's not just our show. We do the same thing. We're riding, listening to our radio in the car. You know, we listen to radio program. We just listen to radio, and it never crosses our mind. It takes money for this to happen. You know, for the radio stations you listen to in your car, they have advertisers. Right, you know.
I sold that. I used to work in radio. I sold advertising. I know, brother.
Exactly.
I know.
You know what I'm saying? You know, but those of us out here who are in this movement for the liberation of our people, like if you listen to WBLR Black Liberation Radio, you will not hear one advertisement. Not one. I shouldn't say that. We are trying to promote Sister Karen Stewart's work because she, her financial advisor. But she, you know, because of her service to the village, that's our way of saying thank you to the sister. But other than that, you don't hear ads on WBLR, you know, because once you start advertising, then the advertisers want to try to tell you what to do. So we want to be free to do what we have to do. So y'all support this brother, support Brother Ray, support Brother Keedy. I heard that he's back on the air now. Is that correct?
Keedy, I didn't know he stopped being on the air.
Yeah, man, he had gone off the air for a while.
Okay, okay, I got to get with it because I want to advertise with him. And on African History Network, we have advertisers, not a lot, but these are advertisers who listen to the show and support what we do. So we have a few advertisers, but you know, the only thing that keeps us afloat, because there's sometimes, brother, I'm trying to figure out, man, how am I going to do the next show?
You know I know, brother. You know I know, man.
This is not easy, brother. But look, man. Time is getting away from us, but in the chat room, Brother Pianki said, tell Brother Ray, Pianki said he thinks the last of those preachers who gave him problems back in the 90s, I believe, are dead. Okay, so. Wow.
Hey, you know what, man? Motto Tep, Brother Pianki. I know exactly who the brother is right here. In fact, I got to say it to the brother. You know, man, the preachers here in St. Louis came against me, man. They told me.
Yeah, that's what he said.
They marched up in my church, man. They said, don't come here talking that black stuff. And Brother Pianki personally came to the African Village as a member for himself and as a representative of National Black United Front. And that was one of the first brothers in this city, man, to reach out their hand to show me the grip of another brother and the fellowship of some warriors here. So I love the brother for that, man, and he helped my initial coming to St. Louis be a little bit more bearable.
Exactly, yes, exactly. Hotel Brother Pianki in the chat room. Okay, let's go to the phone line because people have been beholden and people in the chat room talking, brother. This is fantastic tonight. Let's go to the 864 quickly. Call on the 864. Welcome to the African History Network show. Do you have a question? We're only doing questions tonight. Please write them down. We only have a few minutes. You have a question for Brother Ray? Call on the 864. Call on the 864. You there? Going once, going twice. They may just be listening. Let's go to the 267 quickly. Call on the 267. Welcome to the African History Network show. Tell us your name, where you're calling from. Call on 267. Okay, I know Blog Talk was having a problem with their phone lines also. I think they may have to straighten out. Let me see. I'm having people email their questions in to me also. If you have a question, and because we know some people are having problems getting through on the phone line also, you can email your question to the ahnshow@gmail.com. T is in Tom, H is in Henry, E Edward, A Apple, H Henry, N Nelson, show, SHOW @gmail.com. The AHN show @gmail.com. I'm going to pull up a question from that we got from the email also. And let's go quickly to the 803. Call in the 803. Welcome to the African History Network show. Tell us your name and where you're calling from. Calling the 803. Okay, so looks like we're having problems with the phone line. Let's go to an email question here. And let me pull this up just a second, Brother Ray. This is what happens with live radio. I know you know.
Well, you know what's really interesting, brother?
Yeah.
I don't know if you heard the show that I do out of Florida this past Tuesday.
I heard some of you. Yeah, the first 13 minutes were blank, brother.
First 13 minutes were blank, brother. And not only that, but, brother, the rest of the show was absolute, total, complete interference. Okay, and what's really deep, man, is just as we were signing off the show, everything cleared up. So, hey, brother, I don't know. What can I say, brother?
Interesting.
Yeah,
well, I know the night Blog Talk was having problems with their lines. I got the messages from them with their phone lines. But here's a question from brother. Oh, go ahead.
I was gonna say, let's see how long the trouble will last.
Here's a question from Brother DeQuincy Reed. He said, could you please deal with the theories that Moses is Sinu, Sinuhe, Akhenaten, or possibly based on other Egyptians? You familiar with that?
Yes. Like he said, it's a theory.
Yeah.
People are trying to make Akhenaten Moses. The closest I claim that the entire concept of where they got Moses from was Pharaoh Jehudi Ra Tehudi made. Okay.
Yeah.
And the reason why I say that is because I'm sorry, I said that wrong. Menkeper Ra Tehudi made. I knew I was saying something wrong. Menkeper Ra Tehudi made. And the reason I'm saying that is because the Greeks renamed him Thutmoses.
Yes.
The third, you see? And so in his name that the Greeks were given to him, we have the word Moses, all right? But even more than that is the place, the burial grounds of the Moses of the Bible, okay? The Moses of the Bible, according to the Bible, it says that God buried him in a mountain, and no one knows where his grave is to this day, all right? Well, Akhenaten wasn't buried in a mountain.
Right.
You follow what I'm saying? Menkeper Ra Tehudi Mase was buried in a mountain. Okay? In fact, it's known today now as the Valley of the Kings. All right, which is actually a massive mountain that looks like a giant pyramid. Okay? And in this mountain, you have to really do some serious climbing. Okay? I mean, some serious climbing, man. In fact, people who go with me on my tour, I recommend that anyone over a certain age and anyone got any kind of, respiratory conditions, don't even try to go to see the sarcophagus of Menkeper Ra Tehudi Mase, because you have to climb up this mountain and then down into the mountain. Okay?
Right.
So because of that attachment as well, the biblical reference of hiding Moses' body in a mountain, that only applies to Menkeper Ra Tehudi Mase, who the Greeks renamed Thutmoses. Now, that is just my thesis, and others' thesis on that as well, but that doesn't necessarily mean that this was the real Moses, because Moses never existed, so we need to understand.
Exactly. Okay, bro, let's do this. We're going to take a quick break here. We got to take a quick commercial break, and we're going to come back. We're going to get a few more questions answered, and we stopped live streaming at the top of the hour, which is 11 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So in this broadcast that is internet, that's live streamed, we have 23 minutes. We're going to let Brother Ray go. We don't want to hold him too long, so we'll let him go at the top of the hour. But what I'm going to do is, if you want to listen to the rest of the show after the top of the hour, you have to listen by phone. So those who are on the phone now, it looks like our phone lines are totally full. We got about 100 callers on the phone lines. Stay on the phone line. What I'm going to do in the last hour of the show, I'm going to play some clips of Brother Ray's lecture, Egypt, the Source of the Bible. And you can get his lecture from WBLR.com. You can purchase it there. I think is it $10, brother, on WBLR?
Yes, brother. All of my DVDs are $10 except, Egypt, the Source of the Bible, and The Verdict is In. Those two are $15. But all
15.
the rest
Well, it's well worth it. It's well worth it. Okay, stand by, brother. We'll be back in a few minutes, okay?
Okay,
stand
brother.
by.
Agenda. Until and unless we can define an agenda that can envision a world in which they don't exist. Now we have to wake up and come back to the reality of them. But certainly when we talk about a future, we have to talk about a future from our point of view and our historical understanding of reality.
Come out, you African spirits.
Once we roamed the land completely free. Good was the time when village heads dictated policy. Great was the hunting in those days. Abundant was the game. Peaceful relations we all had before the white man came. Healthy our bodies and our minds, strong were our backs and teeth. Many a moonlit night was spent dancing around the flames. Never a hungry moment Roman myth. Before the white man came. Clear were the streams that coursed this place. Fishing was at its best. Silver and gold the trinkets we wore. In the finest of clothes we were dressed. Large were the herds of longhorn steer and buffalo on the plains. Full was the peace pipe that we smoked before the white man came. And then the day of the curse arrived, and they landed on these shores. What manner of being is this, we said? We have never seen them before. But even so, we extended our hand as we would unto a friend. How could we have known that syphilis and claps and plague had come with them? And now it has been 400 years since that eventful day. But if we had known what they had in mind, they all would have died in the bay. So now we're paying for our mistakes, with only ourselves to blame, with memories of the good old years before the white man came.
Shango. to the moderator, ladies and gentlemen, friends and enemies. Tonight I hope that we can have a little fireside chat with as few sparks as possible being tossed around, especially because of the very explosive condition that the world is in today. Sometimes when a person is putting the house on fire, and that person to whom the house belongs is asleep, if someone comes in yelling fire, instead of the person who's awakened by the yell being thankful, they make the mistake of charging the one who awakened them with having set the fire. I hope that this little conversation tonight about the Black Revolution won't cause many of you to accuse us of igniting it when you find it at your doorstep. I'm still a Muslim. That is, my religion is still Islam. I still believe that there's no God but Allah, and that Muhammad is the apostle of Allah. That just happens to be my personal religion. But in the capacity that I'm functioning in today, I have no intention to mix my religion with the problems of 22 million black people in this country, just as it's possible for a great man whom I greatly respect, Ben Bella, to be a Muslim and still be a nationalist, and another one whom I greatly respect, Jamal Nasser, to be a Muslim and still be a nationalist, and Sukarno of Indonesia to be a Muslim and still be a nationalist. It was nationalism that enabled them to gain freedom for their people. I'm still a Muslim, but I'm also a nationalist, meaning that my political philosophy is black nationalism, my economic philosophy is black nationalism, my social philosophy is black nationalism. And when I say that this philosophy is black nationalism, to me this means the political philosophy of black nationalism is that which is designed to encourage our people, the black people, to gain complete control over the politics and politicians of our own community. Our economic philosophy is that we should gain control over the economy of our own community, the businesses and other things that create employment so that we can provide jobs for our own people instead of having to picket and boycott and beg someone else for a job. And in short, our social philosophy only means that we feel it is time to get together among our own kind and eliminate the evils that are destroying the moral fiber of our society, like drug addiction, drunkenness, welfare problems. We believe that we should lift the level or the standard of our own society to a higher level wherein we will be satisfied and then not inclined towards pushing ourselves into other societies where we're not wanted. All of that aside, tonight we are dealing with the Black Revolution. During recent years, there's been much talk about a population explosion. And whenever they're speaking of the population explosion, in my opinion, they're referring to the people primarily in Asia or in Africa, the black, brown, red, and yellow people. It is seen by people of the West that as soon as the standard of living is raised in Africa and Asia, automatically the people begin to produce abundantly. And there has been a great deal of fear engendered by this in the minds of the people of the West, who happen to be on this earth a very small minority. In fact, in most of the thinking and planning of whites in the West today, it's easy to see that fear in their minds, conscious mind and subconscious mind, that the masses of dark people in the West, in the East rather, who already outnumber them, will continue to increase and multiply and grow until they eventually overrun the people of the West like a human sea, a human tide, a human flood. And this fear of this can be seen in the mind and in the actions of most of the people here in the West in practically everything that they do. It governs their political views, it governs their economic views, and it governs most of their attitudes towards the present society. I was listening to Dirksen, some senator from Illinois, in Washington, D.C. last week, filibustering the Civil Rights Bill. And one of the things he kept stressing over and over and over, that if this bill is passed, it'll change the social structure of America. Well, I know what he's getting at. And I think that most other people today, especially our people, know what is meant when these whites who filibuster these bills, especially and express fears of changes in the social structure, our people are beginning to realize what they mean. Just as we can see that all over the world, one of the main problems facing the West is race. Likewise, here in America today, most of your Negro leaders as well as the whites agree that 1964 itself appears to be one of the most explosive years yet in the history of America on the racial front, on the racial scene. Not only is this racial explosion probably to take place in America, but all of the ingredients for this racial explosion in America to blossom into a worldwide racial explosion present itself right here in front of us. America's racial powder keg, in short, can actually fuse or ignite a worldwide racial powder keg. And whites in this country who are still complacent when they see the possibility of a racial strife in this country getting out of hand, and you are complacent simply because you think you outnumber the racial minority in this country. What you have to bear in mind is wherein you might outnumber us in this country, you don't outnumber us all over the earth. And any kind of racial explosion that takes place in any kind of racial explosion that takes place in this country today, in 1964, is not a racial explosion that can be confined to the shores of America. It's a racial explosion that can ignite the racial powder keg that exists all over the planet that we call Earth. Now, I think that anybody would agree that the dark masses of Africa and Asia and Latin America are already seething with bitterness, animosity, hostility, and unrest and impatience with the racial intolerance that they themselves have experienced at the hands of the white West. And just as they themselves have the ingredients of hostility toward the West in general, here we also have 22 million African Americans, black, brown, red, and yellow people in this country who are also seething with bitterness and impatience and hostility and animosity over the racial intolerance not only of the white West in general, but of white America in particular. And by the hundreds of thousands today, we find that our own people have become impatient and are turning away from your white nationalism, which you call democracy, toward the militant, uncompromising philosophy of black nationalism. And I might point out right here that as soon as we announced that we were going to start a black nationalist party in this country, we received mail from coast to coast, especially from young people at the college level, the university level, who expressed complete sympathy and support and a desire to take an active part in any kind of political action based upon black nationalism designed to correct or eliminate immediately the evils that our people have suffered here for 400 years. The black nationalists, to many of you, may represent only a minority in the community. And therefore, you might have a tendency to classify it as something that's insignificant. But just as the fuse is the smallest part or the smallest piece in the powder keg, it is yet that little fuse that ignites the entire powder keg. The black nationalists, to you, may represent a small minority in the so-called Negro community, but yet they just happen to be composed of the type of ingredients necessary to fuse or ignite the entire black community. And this is one thing that whites, whether you call yourselves liberals, conservatives, or racists, or whatever you might choose to be, one thing that you have to realize is that where the black community is concerned, although the large majority that you come in contact with may impress you as being moderate and patient and loving and long-suffering and all that kind of stuff, the minority whom you consider to be Muslims or nationalists happen to be made of the type of ingredient that can easily spark the entire black community. This should be understood, because to me a powder keg is nothing without a fuse. '64 will be America's hottest year, her hottest year yet. A year of much racial violence and much racial bloodshed. But it won't be blood that's going to flow only on one side. The new generation of black people who have grown up in this country during recent years are already forming the opinion, and it's a just opinion, that if there's to be bleeding, it should be reciprocal. Bleeding on both sides. It should also be understood that the racial sparks that are ignited here in America today could easily turn into a flaming fire abroad, which only means it could engulf all the people of this earth into a giant race war. You can't confine it to one little neighborhood or one little community or one little country. What happens to a black man in America today happens to the black man in Africa. What happens to the black man in America and in Africa happens to the black man in Asia and to the man down in Latin America. What happens to one of us today happens to all of us. And when this is realized, I think that the whites who are intelligent, even though they aren't moral or aren't just or aren't impressed by legality, those who are intelligent will realize that when they touch this one, they're touching all of them, and this in itself will have a tendency to be a checking factor. The seriousness of this situation must be faced up to. I was in Cleveland last night, Cleveland, Ohio. In fact, I was there Friday, Saturday, and yesterday. And that last Friday, the warning was given that this is a year of bloodshed, that the black man has ceased to turn the other cheek, that he has ceased to be nonviolent, that he has ceased to feel that he must be confined to all these restraints that are put upon him by white society in struggling for what white society says he was supposed to have had 100 years ago. So today, when the black man starts reaching out for what America says are his rights, the black man feels that he is within his rights. When he becomes the victim of brutality by those who are depriving him of his rights to do whatever is necessary to protect himself. And an example of this was taking place last night at the same time in Cleveland, where the police were putting water hoses on our people there and also throwing tear gas at them. And they met a hail of stones, a hail of rocks, a hail of bricks. Well, you're in a A couple of weeks ago in Jacksonville, Florida, young teenage Negroes were throwing Molotov cocktails. Now, Negroes didn't do this 10 years ago. But what you should learn from this is they're waking up. It'll be Molotov, it was stones yesterday, Molotov cocktails today, it'll be hand grenades tomorrow, and whatever else is available the next day. The seriousness of this situation should be faced up to. You should not feel that I'm inciting someone to violence. I'm only warning of a powder keg situation that you can take it or leave it. If you take the warning, perhaps you can still save yourself. But if you ignore it or ridicule it, well, death is already at your doorstep. There are 22 million African Americans who are ready to fight for independence right here. And when I say fight for independence right here, I don't mean any non-violent fight or turn the other cheek fight. Those days are gone. Those days are over. If George Washington didn't get independence for this country non-violently, and if Patrick Henry didn't come up with a non-violent statement, and you taught me to look upon them as patriots and heroes, then it's time for you to realize I have studied your books well. Our people, 22 million African Americans, are fed up with America's hypocritical democracy. And today we care nothing about the odds that are against us. Every time a black man gets ready to defend himself, some Uncle Tom starts trying to tell us, how can you win? That's Tom talking. Don't listen to him. This is the first thing we hear. The odds are against us. You're dealing with black people who don't care anything about odds. We care nothing about odds. Again, I go right back to the people who founded and who secured the independence of this country from the colonial powers of England. When George Washington and the others got ready to declare or come up with a Declaration of Independence, they didn't care anything about the odds of the British Empire. They were fed up with taxation without representation. And you've got 22 million black people in this country today, 1964, who are fed up with taxation without representation and will do the same thing. Who are ready, willing, and justified to do the same thing today to bring about independence for our people that your forefathers did to bring about independence for your people. And I say your people because I certainly couldn't include myself among those for whom independence was fought in 1776. How in the world can a Negro talk about the Declaration of Independence and he's still singing, "We shall overcome"? Our people increasingly are developing the opinion that we just have nothing to lose but the chains of segregation and the chains of second-class citizenship. So 1964 will see the Negro revolt evolve and merge into the worldwide black revolution that has been taking place on this earth since 1945. The so-called revolt will become a real black revolution. Now, the black revolution has been taking place in Africa and Asia and in Latin America. When I say black, I mean non-white. Black, brown, red, or yellow. Our brothers and sisters in Asia who were colonized by the Europeans, our brothers and sisters in Africa who were colonized by the Europeans, and in Latin America, the peasants who were colonized by the Europeans, have been involved in a struggle since 1945 to get the colonialists or the colonizing power, the Europeans, off their land, out of their country. This is a real revolution. Revolution is always based on land. Revolution is never based on begging somebody for an integrated cup of coffee. Revolutions are never fought by turning the other cheek. Revolutions are never based upon love your enemy and pray for those who despitefully use you. And revolutions are never waged singing, "We shall overcome." Revolutions are based on bloodshed. Revolutions are never compromised. Revolutions are never based upon negotiation. Revolutions are never based upon any kind of tokenism whatsoever. Revolutions are never even based upon that which is begging a corrupt society or a corrupt system to accept us into it. Revolutions overturn systems. And there is no system on this earth has proven itself more corrupt, more criminal than the system that right in 1972 than this system that in 1964 still colonizes African Americans, still enslave 22 million Afro-Americans. There is no system more corrupt than a system that represents itself as the example of freedom, the example of democracy, and can go all over this earth telling other people how to straighten out their house, and you have half of the citizens in this country who have to use bullets if they want to cast a ballot. The greatest weapon that the colonial powers have used in the past against our people has always been divide and conquer. America is a colonial power. She has colonized 22 million Afro-Americans by depriving us of first-class citizenship, by depriving us of civil rights, actually by depriving us of human rights. She not only deprived us of the right to be a citizen, she deprived us of the right to be a human being, the right to be recognized and respected as men and women. And in this country, a black man can be 50 years old and still a boy. I grew up with white people. I was integrated before they invented the word. And I have never met white people yet. If you don't be around them long enough, you won't refer to you as a boy or a gal, no matter how old you are, no matter what school you came out of, no matter what your intellectual or professional level is. In this society, we remain poor. So America's strategy is the same strategy as that we used by the past, in the past, divide and conquer. He plays one Negro leader against the other. He plays one Negro organization against the other. He makes us think that we have different objectives, different goals. As soon as one Negro says something, he runs to this Negro and asks him, what do you think about what he says? Why, anybody can do that today, except some of the Negro leaders. All of our people have the same goal, the same objective: freedom, justice, equality. All of us want recognition and respect as human beings. We don't want to be integration, nor do we want to be separation. We want to be human beings. Integration is only a method that's used by some groups to obtain freedom, justice, equality, and respect as human beings. Separation is only a method that's used by other groups to obtain freedom, justice, equality, or human dignity. So our people have made the mistake of confusing the method with the objective. As long as we agree on objectives, we should never fall out with each other just because we believe in different methods or tactics or strategies to reach a common objective. We have to keep in mind at all times that we aren't fighting for integration, nor are we fighting for separation. We're fighting for recognition. We're fighting for the right to live as free humans in this society. In fact, we're actually fighting for rights that are even greater than civil rights, and that is human rights. We're fighting for human rights in 1964. The civil rights struggle has failed to produce the concrete results because it has kept us backing up the wrong tree. It has made us push the cart ahead of the horse. We must have human rights before we can secure civil rights. We must be respected as humans before we can be recognized as citizens. Among the so-called Negroes in this country, as a rule, the civil rights groups, or those who believe in civil rights, they spend most of their time trying to prove that they're Americans. They're thinking they do believe domestic, confined to the boundaries of America. And they always look upon themselves as a minority. When they look upon themselves on the American stage is a white stage. So a black man standing on that stage in America automatically is in the minority. He's the underdog. And in his struggle, he always uses an approach that's a very hand-in-hand compromise approach. Whereas the other segment or faction in America, known as the nationalists, black nationalists, are more interested in human rights than they are in civil rights. And they place more stress on human rights than they do in civil rights. The difference between the thinking and the scope of the Negroes who are involved in the human rights struggle and those in the civil rights struggle those so-called Negroes involved in the human rights struggle don't look upon themselves as Americans. They look upon themselves as a part of dark mankind. They see the whole struggle not within the confines of the American stage, but they look upon the struggle on the world stage. And in the world context, they see that the dark man outnumbers the white man. On the world stage, the white man is just a microscopic minority. Well, in this country, you find two different types of Afro-Americans. The type who looks upon himself as the minority and you as the majority, because his scope is limited to the American scene. Then you have the type who looks upon himself as part of the majority and you as part of a microscopic minority. And this one uses a different approach in trying to struggle for his rights. He doesn't say. He doesn't thank you for what you give him, because you're only giving him what he should have had 100 years ago. He doesn't think you're doing him any favors. He doesn't see any progress that he has made since the Civil War. He sees not one iota of progress, because number one, if the Civil War had freed him, he wouldn't need civil rights legislation today. If the Emancipation Proclamation issued by that great shining liberal called Lincoln had freed him, he wouldn't be singing "We Should Overcome" today. If the amendments to the Constitution had solved his problem, still his problem wouldn't be here today. And even if the Supreme Court desegregation decision of 1954 was genuinely and sincerely designed to solve his problem, the problem wouldn't be with us today. So this kind of black man here is thinking. He can see where every maneuver that America has made, supposedly to solve his problem, has been nothing but political trickery and treachery of the worst order. So today he doesn't have any confidence in these so-called liberals. Now, I know most of you all coming in here tonight, you don't call yourselves liberals. Because that's a nasty name today. It represents hypocrisy. So these two different types of black people exist in the so-called Negro community. And they are beginning to wake up, and their awakening is producing a very dangerous situation. So you have whites in the community who express sincerity when they say they want to help. Well, how can they help? How can a white person help the black man solve his problem? Number one, you can't solve it for him. You can help him solve it, but you can't solve it for him today. One of the best ways that you can solve it, or help him solve it, is to let the so-called Negro who's involved in the civil rights struggle see that the civil rights struggle must be expanded beyond the level of civil rights to the level of human rights. Once it is expanded beyond the level of civil rights to the level of human rights, it opens the door for all of our brothers and sisters in Africa and Asia who have their independence to come to our rescue. Why? When you go to Washington, D.C., expecting those crooks down there to pass some kind of, and that's what they are, to pass some kind of civil rights legislation to correct a very criminal situation, what you're doing is encouraging the black man who is the victim to take his case into the court that's controlled by the criminal. It'll never be solved in that way. Just like running from the wolf to the fox. The civil rights struggle involves the black man taking his case to the white man's court. But when he's faced it at the human rights level, it's a different situation. It opens the door for him to take Uncle Sam to world court. The black man shouldn't have to go to court to be free. Uncle Sam should be taken to court and made to tell why the black man is not free in a so-called free society. Uncle Sam should be taken into the United Nations and charged with violating the UN Charter on Human Rights. can forget civil rights. How are you going to get civil rights with men like Eastman and men like Dutton and men like Johnson? It has to be taken out of their hands and taken into the hands of those power and authority that treat theirs. So in the civil rights struggle, those so-called Negroes involved in the human rights struggle don't look upon themselves as Americans. They look upon themselves as a part of dark mankind. They see the whole struggle not within the confines of the American state, but they look upon the struggle on the world stage. And in the world context, they see that the dark man outnumbers the white man. On the world stage, the white man is just a microscopic minority. Well, in this country, you find two different types of Afro-Americans. The type who looks upon himself as the minority and you as the majority, because his scope is limited to the American people. Then you have the type who looks upon himself as part of the majority and you as part of a microscopic minority. And this one uses a different approach in trying to struggle for his rights. He doesn't thank you for what you give him, because you're only giving him what he should have had 100 years ago. He doesn't think you're doing him any favors. He doesn't see any progress that he has made, since the Civil War. He sees not one iota of progress, because number one, if the Civil War had freed him, he wouldn't need civil rights legislation today. If the Emancipation Proclamation issued by that great shining liberal called Lincoln had freed him, he wouldn't be singing "We Should Overcome" today. If the amendments to the Constitution had solved his problem, still his problem wouldn't be here today. And even if the Supreme Court desegregation decision of 1954 was genuinely and sincerely designed to solve his problem, the problem wouldn't be with us today. So this kind of black man is thinking. He can see where every maneuver that America has made, supposedly to solve his problem, has been nothing but political trickery and treachery of the worst order. So today he doesn't have any confidence in these so-called liberals. Now I know most of you all coming in here tonight, you don't call yourselves liberals. Because that's a nasty name today. It represents hypocrisy. So these two different types of black people exist in the so-called Negro community. And they are beginning to wake up, and their awakening is producing a very dangerous situation. So you have whites in the community who express sincerity when they say they want to help. Well, how can they help? How can a white person help the black man solve his problem? Number one, you can't solve it for him. You can help him solve it, but you can't solve it for him today. One of the best ways that you can solve it, or help him solve it, is to let the so-called Negro who's been involved in the civil rights struggle see that the civil rights struggle must be expanded beyond the level of civil rights to the level of human rights. Once it is expanded beyond the level of civil rights to the level of human rights, it opens the door for all of our brothers and sisters in Africa and Asia who have their independence to come to our rescue. Why? When you go to Washington, D.C., expecting those crooks down there to pass some kind of, and that's what they are, to pass some kind of civil rights legislation to correct a very criminal situation, what you're doing is encouraging the black man who is the victim to take his case into the court that's controlled by the criminal that made him the victim. It'll never be solved in that way. It's like running from the wolf to the fox. The civil rights struggle involves the black man taking his case to the white man's court. But when he fights it at the human rights level, it's a different situation. It opens the door for him to take Uncle Sam to world court. The black man shouldn't have to go to court to be free. Uncle Sam should be taken to court and made to tell why the black man is not free in a so-called free society. Uncle Sam should be taken into the United Nations and charged with violating the UN Charter on Human Rights. You can forget civil rights. How are you going to get civil rights with men like Eastman and men like Dutton and men like Johnson? It has to be taken out of their hands and taken into the hands of those whose power and authority exceeds theirs. Washington has become too corrupt. Uncle Sam's conscience. Uncle Sam has become bankrupt when it comes to a conscience. It's impossible for Uncle Sam to solve the problem of 22 million black people.
The all-seeing eye has it in for me, ash on ash. The all-seeing eye has it in for me, batteries in my kidneys. I wanna go back, but I can't. Sucked up into a black hole. Might have been better than this. They try to bury us, we kicking on dirt. That's my dungeon, civilization. Enzymes dying in my belly, just dirt. You chase fame, we chase infamy. With softened skulls, we fight against the millennia. Shoot me down if you feel the need. Everybody knows you can't swim against the sea. Technology, shoot me down if you feel the need. The all-seeing eye has it in for me, ash on ash. Batteries in my kidneys. I wanna go back, but I can't. Sucked up into a black hole. Might have been better than this. They try to bury us, we kicking up dirt. That's my dungeon, civilization. Enzymes dying in my belly, just dirt. You chase fame, we chase infamy. With softened skulls, we fight against the millennia. Shoot me down if you feel the need. Everybody knows you can't swim against the sea. Technology, I wanna go back, but I can't. Sucked up into a black hole. Might have been better than this. They try to bury us, we kicking up dirt. That's my dungeon, civilization. Enzymes dying in my belly, just dirt. You chase fame, we chase infamy. With softened skulls, we fight against the millennia. Fuck up, Peter. Ladies and gentlemen, it's time for trap. This is certified trap. Now that's trap. Ladies and gentlemen, it's time for trap. Fuck up, Peter. The all-seeing eye has it in for me, ash on ash. Batteries in my kidneys. I wanna go back, but I can't. Sucked up into a black hole. Might have been better than this. They try to bury us, we kicking up dirt. That's my dungeon, civilization. Enzymes dying in my belly, just dirt. You chase fame, we chase infamy. With softened skulls, we fight against the millennia. Shoot me down if you feel the need. Everybody knows you can't swim against the sea. Technology, ash on ash. Batteries in my kidneys. I wanna go back, but I can't. Sucked up into a black hole. Might have been better than this. They try to bury us, we kicking up dirt. That's my dungeon, civilization. Enzymes dying in my belly, just dirt. You chase fame, we chase infamy. With softened skulls, we fight against the millennia. Shoot me down if you feel the need. Everybody knows you can't swim against the sea.
From outside court. I haven't got anything to do, but that's the problem. How you know you're going to talk about problems on the other side of the world and you haven't got the problem straightened out here? How can the plight of free 3 million Jews in Russia be qualified to be taken to the United Nations by a man who is a justice in this Supreme Court and is supposed to be a liberal, supposed to be a friend of black people, and hasn't opened up his mouth one time about taking the plight of black people down there to the United Nations. Our people are becoming more politically mature. Their eyes are coming open. They're beginning to see the trends in all of the American politics today. They notice that every time there's an election, it's so close among whites that they have to count the votes over again. This happened in Massachusetts when they were running for governor. It happened in Rhode Island. It happened in Minnesota and many other places. And it happened in the election between Kennedy and Nixon. Things are so close. Any minority who has a block vote can swing either way. And I think most of the students of political science agree that it was the 80% support that Kennedy got from the black man in this country that enabled him to sit in the White House. He sat down there 4 years and the Negro is still in the doghouse. Same ones that we put in the White House have continued to keep us in the doghouse. The Negro can see that he holds the balance of power in this country for that. It is he who puts in office the one who gets in office. Yet when the Negro helps that person get in office, the Negro gets nothing in return. All he gets is a few appointments, a few handshakes, Uncle Tom, and Negroes are given big jobs in Washington, D.C. And then those Negroes come back and try and make us think that administration is going to lead us to the promised land of integration. And the only ones whose problem has been solved have been those handshake Negroes. A few big Negroes got jobs who didn't even need the job. They already were working. But the masses of black people are still unemployed. The present administration, the Democratic administration, has been down there for 4 years. Yet no meaningful legislation has been passed by them that's supposed to benefit black people in this country. Despite the fact that in the House they have 257 Democrats and only 177 are Republicans. They control 2/3 of the House. In the Senate there are 67 Democrats and only 33 Republicans. The Democrats control 2/3 of the government. And it's the Negroes who put them in position to control the government. Yet they give the Negroes nothing in return but a few handouts in the form of appointments that are only used as window dressing to make it appear that the problem is being solved. No, something is wrong. And when these black people wake up and find out for real the trickery and the treachery that has been heaped upon us, you're going to have revolution. And when I say revolution, I don't mean that stuff they were talking about last year about we shall overcome. That's no revolution. The Democrats get Negro support, yet the Negroes get nothing in return. The Negroes put the Democrats first, yet the Democrats put the Negroes last. And the alibi that the Democrats use, they blame the Dixiecrat. A Dixiecrat is nothing but a Democrat in disguise. You show me a Dixiecrat and I'll show you a Democrat. And chances are you show me a Democrat and I'll show you a Dixiecrat. Because Dixie in reality means all that territory south of the Canadian border. There are 16 senatorial committees that run this government. Of the 16 senatorial committees that run the government, 10 of them are controlled by chairmen who are from the South. Of the 20 congressional committees that help run the government, 12 of them are controlled by Southern segregationists. Think of this. 10 of the senatorial committees are in the hands of the Dixiecrats. 12 of the 20 congressional committees are in the hands of the Dixiecrats. These committees can still control the government. And you're going to tell us that the South lost the Civil War. The South controls the government. And they control it because they have seniority. And they have seniority because in the states that they come from, they deny Negroes the right to vote. If Negroes could vote south of Canadian border, if the Negroes could vote in the southern part of the South, Ellender wouldn't be the head of the Agricultural and Forestry Committee. Richard Russell wouldn't be the head of the Armed Services Committee. Robertson of Virginia wouldn't be the head of the Banking and Currency Committee. Imagine that, all the banking and currency of the government in the hands of a cracker. In fact, when you see how many of these committee men who control the government are from the South, you can see we got nothing but a cracker government in Washington, D.C. And their head is our cracker president. I said our cracker president. Texas is just as much a cracker state as Mississippi. And even more so. In Texas, they lynch you with a Texas accent, and in Mississippi, they lynch you with a Mississippi accent. And the first thing this man did when he came in office was invite all the big Negroes down for coffee. James Farmer was one of the first ones, the head of CORE. I have nothing against him. He's all right. Farmer, that is. But could that same president have invited James Farmer to Texas for coffee? And if James Farmer went to Texas, could he have taken his white wife with him to have coffee with the president? Anytime you have a man who can't straighten out Texas, how can he straighten out the country? No, you're barking up the wrong tree. If Negroes in the South could vote, the Dixiecrats would lose power. When the Dixiecrats lost power, the Democrats would lose power. A Dixiecrat lost is a Democrat lost. Therefore, the two of them have to conspire with each other to stay in power. The Northern Dixiecrat puts all the blame on the Southern Dixiecrat. It's a con game, a giant political con game. The job of the Northern Democrat is to make the Negro think that he's our friend. He's always smiling and wagging his tail and telling us how much he can do for us if we vote for him. But at the same time, he's out in front telling us what he's going to do behind the door. He's in cahoots with the Southern Democrat, setting up the machinery to make sure that he'll never have to keep his promise. This is the conspiracy that our people have faced in this country for the past 100 years. And today you have a new generation of black people who have come on the scene, who have become disenchanted with the entire system, who have become disillusioned over the system, and who are ready now and willing to do something about it. So in my conclusion, in speaking about the black revolution, America today is at a time, or in a day, or at an hour, when she is the first country on this earth who can actually have a bloodless revolution. In the past, revolutions have been bloody. Historically, you just don't have a peaceful revolution. Revolutions are bloody. Revolutions are violent. Revolutions cause bloodshed and death following their path. America is the only country in history in a position to bring about a revolution without violence and bloodshed. But America is not motivated to do so. Why is America in a position to bring about a bloodless revolution? Because the Negro in this country holds the balance of power. And if the Negro in this country were given what the Constitution says he's supposed to have, the added power of the Negro in this country would sweep all of the racists and the segregationists out of office. It would change the entire political structure of the country. It would wipe out the Southern segregationists who now control America's foreign policy, as well as America's domestic policy. And the only way, without bloodshed, that this can be brought about is that the black man has to be given full use of the ballot in every one of the 50 states. But if the black man doesn't get the ballot, then you're going to be faced with another man who forgets the ballot and start using the bullet. Revolutions are fought to gain control of land, to remove the absentee landlord, and gain control of the land and the institutions that flow from that land. The black man has been in a very low condition because he has had no control whatsoever over any land. He has been a beggar economically, a beggar politically, a beggar socially, a beggar even when it comes to trying to get some education. So that in the past, the type of mentality that was developed in this colonial system among our people, that today is being overcome. And as these young ones come up, they know what they want. And as they listen to your beautiful preachments about democracy and all those other flowery words, they know what they're supposed to have. So you got a people today who not only know what they want, but also know what they're supposed to have. And they themselves are creating another generation that is coming up that not only will know what it wants and know what it will have, but will also be ready and willing to do whatever is necessary to see that what they should have is materializes immediately. Thank you.
Is this like a fear which once characterized the Negro, this willingness to stand up courageously for what he feels is just and what he feels he deserves on the basis of the laws of the land? I think also included would be this self-assertive attitude that you just mentioned. And all of these factors come together to make what seems to me to be the new Negro. I think also I would like to mention this growing honesty which characterizes the Negro today. There was a time that the Negro used duplicity or deception to rather as a survival technique. Although he didn't particularly like conditions, he said he liked them because he felt that the boss wanted to hear that. But now from the housetops, from the kitchen, from the classrooms, and from the pulpits, the Negro says in no uncertain terms that he doesn't like the way he's being treated. So at long last, the Negro is telling the truth. And I think this is also one of the basic characteristics of the new Negro.
On the move, I greet you all in your dual celebrations of the historic Juneteenth and the birthday of Sekou Odinga, the political prisoner of war and veteran of the Black Panther Party and the BLA. Sekou Abdullah Odinga helped establish the party in New York and later played a similar role in the establishment of the party international section in Algiers way back in 1970. He was a stalwart soldier for his people and engaged in a number of battles for freedom. So I join you all in celebrating his extraordinary life, a struggle, on his birthday, Juneteenth. Fight for his freedom like we fought for ours. On the move, I love you all. Thank you. From Death Row, this is Mumia Abu-Jamal.
ጃንሆይ በአፍሪካ ውስጥ አሁን ኮሎኒያሊዝምን የመቃወም የዘር ልዩነትን የመቃወም መንፈስ እያየለና እየተሞከረ መሄድ ይዟል። በዚህ አይነት ሁኔታ ነጮች በአፍሪካ ውስጥ ምን ይችላላቸው? በሰላም እዛ ለመኖር ይችላሉ ወይስ በአፍሪካኖች መገዛት የሚጀምሩበት ሁኔታ ይፈጠራል? የአፍሪካ አንድነት ፓርቲ ሳይታወቅ ተናገርነው ለአፍሪካ ውስጥ መሪዎች ገልጸናል። እዚህ ቀደም ኮሎኒያሊስቶች የነበሩት ሁሉ ለኮሎኒ ክፉም ቢያደርጉ መልካም አድርገዋል እና ተስማምቶ መኖር አስፈላጊ ነው። አለበለዚያ ግን ኮኤግዚስታንስ የተባለው ይፋታል። ስለዚህ ሰውዬው በውለታ በመፍጠር ስምምነት እንዲኖር ጠይቀናል። ይህም ይፈጸማል ብለን ተስፋ እናደርጋለን። ነጭና ጥቁር የተባለው መንፈስ እንዲፋቅ ይመጣል። አንድ ነው። በሀገር ብቻ ተለይቷል። I would say that at the conference of heads of African states that was held last May in the capital city of Ethiopia, Addis Ababa, before the signing of the charter, I have told in the speech I have made to the distinguished heads of state that the people that were formerly under colonialist regime and who have suffered a great deal must have the generous spirit of wanting to collaborate with their former masters, or otherwise through vengeance and remorse, coexistence would not be possible, and this would be detrimental to the preservation of international peace. I must say that black and white as forms of speech, as means of judging mankind, should be eliminated from human society. Human beings are precisely the same, whatever color, race, or creed, or national origin they may be.
The least among the followers of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, he was one of the highest. He was the secretary of our Los Angeles mosque. And as he explained in that rally on May, many of you thought we could go right on out then and make war on the white. You wanted to do it yourself, didn't you? Didn't you? You wanted some action then, didn't you? Because you don't like the idea of white people shooting black people down, do you? And you're ready to do something about it, aren't you? We know you are. And the white man should be thankful that God has given the Honorable Elijah Muhammad the control over his followers that he has, so that they can play it cool, calm, and collected, and leave it in the hands of God.
And civil rights organizations to form a united front with the Muslims against police brutality.
Let us remember that we are not brutalized because we're Baptists. We're not brutalized because we're Methodists. We're not brutalized because we're Muslims. We're not brutalized because we're Catholic. We're brutalized because we are black people in America. I'm telling you, they came out of those cars and we have enough witnesses to hang with their guns smoking. Chief Parker knows this, Mayor Yardy knows this, and every police official in the city knows this. They didn't fire no warning shots in the air.
They fired warning shots point blank at innocent, unarmed, defenseless Negroes. I say 2 of the brothers were shot in the back. Another was shot in the shoulder. Another was shot, 2 of them were shot, excuse the expression, through the penis. Let me tell you something. Now I'll tell you why you say we hate white people. We don't hate anybody. We love our own people so much they think we hate the ones who are inflicting injustice.